Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and this is the Friday Conversation, episode 50. 50. So,
Wow.
yeah. So, have some of my closest friends here, and here's another one that just popped in. Friend Daniel's here. So, let's start off with some introductions. Thomas, do you want to kick us off?
Thomas J. Devens, author of the Fall of Emerald saga, gritty epic fantasy. And that's about it. Thanks for having me back.
Of course. And Chris?
Yeah, my name's Chris Moon, sometimes YouTuber, and the only thing I think I've ever wrote is a blog post about the dangers of being addicted to things, whether on the internet or otherwise. Yeah, and the dangers that poses, or not, or the fact that we revel in
it. And John?
I'm John Palladino, author of The Trials of Ashmount, a grimdark fantasy, and sometimes I show up here with Steve, who is awesome, and congratulations on 50 of these episodes.
For sure.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Yeah.
And Hans?
Yeah, I'm Hans. I'm a laboratory technician by day and also a reader by night. And this is my first time in Friday Reads, but I've been in some book discussions with Steve before.
Glad you can make it. And of course, our podcast friends for the Prince of Nothing, Katerina.
Hi, I'm Katerina. As Steve's already said, I've been doing the Prince of Nothing read-along podcast with Steve and Daniel. And this is my first time, I think, on Friday Conversation. So thanks for having me and congratulations on the 50th episode.
Thanks for coming. Glad you can make it. And Daniel?
I'm Daniel. I'm also doing the Prince of Nothing podcast. We talked about the House of the Dragon first season. I've also discussed a horror book or two and joined along a lot of the conversations.
Yeah. Without Daniel and Katerina, I'd be totally lost. So these two have put up with me for several weeks, not knowing what's going on. So thank you again for keeping me straight.
And now, Daniel, you have to admit now you're probably a podcaster now, and as like a moniker to go along with with your name. You've done enough now that you've passed the barrier.
I'll accept sometimes co-host. Sometimes I'll co-host with Steve, but that's it.
And Katerina, are you going to add podcaster to your bio now too?
I think I might have to diversify first. Yeah.
It's it's amazing to me that we can all be all around the world and still come together and hang out. So thank you all for hanging out tonight.
Yeah, we're quite well
Pleasure.
spread, for sure.
We are, yeah. Pretty spoiled. And Thomas, you're up in New York, but we were just talking before, so you're not snowed in. You're okay. You're not, 4 feet of
Not
snow.
yet, at least. Right now it's like 30 degrees, but pretty dry.
Nice.
Has there been a lot of snow in America?
Western New York has gotten hammered right now. I think they're under 4 or 5 feet of snow
Wow.
Oh,
in a couple of days. Yeah.
I'm also in New York, and I have not seen much snow.
Is New York built at all for snow? Because I know when it snows here, and I would say this probably in a lot of like Europe or around the kind of Germany, France, UK level as I am, none of the infrastructure is set for any like an inch of snow, and the whole place goes to hell.
Yeah.
Like,
So-
it is not.
Yeah, New York is definitely built for snow, but if you go in the south, if it snows if they even see a flurry, they shut everything down.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
just,
same.
they're
The
just not
Austin,
built for it.
Texas story.
Although
Oh,
around
yeah.
here,
Last year, Austin,
still goes
Texas
to hell
went through like an
sometimes.
inch of snow, and the whole place went through a panic. They didn't have water and no heat.
Yeah, it was well.
Yeah. I just see like places like Canada, it's like 8 inches of snow, and everybody's like, we'll just put on an extra coat.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Yeah.
still driving.
I think New York's like that a lot, but the problem with New York is they have some cities that get absolutely demolished when it comes to snow. And it's like, even if you're set up for it, it's just like too much at once that things just have to shut down. I think Buffalo is really notorious for that.
We just got our
Yeah.
first snow in Prague today, actually, but we tend to handle it pretty well in general.
You pretty prepared for it up there?
Yeah, I mean, it usually snows. Like, we used to get a lot more snow, but generally we get at least a couple of days of snow every winter.
So you went from the desert a few weeks ago to now in the snow. That's a big change.
Yeah. I definitely enjoyed the desert a lot more than this. Like, as soon as it starts snowing, I just go home, I get in the bed, and I don't leave my house until the spring.
I love the snow.
No, it's not for me. For sure. I'm a bit like a Katerina. As soon as there's a bit of cold outside, once you get past the age of about 6 or 7, it's like, no, my relationship with snow is at an end. You know, the fun aspect of it is gone.
I do enjoy looking at it from the inside, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's pretty. That is for sure.
What about you, Hans? Do you get a lot of snow out there?
No, we haven't had any proper snow for a decade, I think. Just
Oh, wow.
one or 2 days of a little layer of snow. Nothing snow you can play in as a kid or something.
Nice. And Daniel, do you have lots of snow in your part of the country?
I think me and you are close to the same. We'll probably get a couple days of snow, and it looks really weird on all the red around because it doesn't like stick everywhere. So much red dirt all over.
And
So
it's
it's
gone
like-
by 11? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like snow in the desert. It's interesting. But the ski resort that's closest to where I live opened faster than the northern part of the state where all the other ski resorts usually open, which is kind of weird. So like 50 miles from me, they had 8 feet of snow up in the mountains. I haven't hardly seen any rain.
Oh, wow.
America is really wide, so the weather varies a lot, Hans.
Yeah.
A lot of different weathers going on all the way across America.
Aaron says no more snow days thanks to recent events. Everyone just goes online to work instantly.
I think it depends on what you do for a job, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can, it's convenient just to not have to travel through it because it's nice to look at, but when you have to travel into it, it's not so nice.
Yeah, traveling sucks.
And Thomas, how's the third book coming along?
It's coming along.
That's
After
super optimistic.
Yeah, it's just been an interesting year so far. I was like 4 chapters away from being done with it, and then like went through a big move and stuff, and just kind of lost steam for a while, and then started trying to get back into it. It was like, holy shit, I don't remember what I wrote. So reread the whole book twice, and now I'm just going back through and editing and rewriting like a bunch of the first couple chapters and working my way back up to get to those last 4 chapters. Probably not going to be the end of the year, but I think probably January, February I'll be releasing it.
Oh, nice. And John, how's your book coming along? It's still with the editor?
I got it back a week ago. I've been editing it. I'm a third of the way through. I'm happy to report that the ease of editing this book is so much better than the first one. The most major issue I have is apparently I killed someone twice. Like Thomas, I took a break in between writing. And I guess the first section of writing, which was about 100,000 words, I think, I killed him right at the end of that section, and I forgot. And then I took a few months off from writing because I'm a binge writer, and got back into it. And when I got close to the end of the book, I was like, "Oh my god, I still have to kill this character I forgot about." So then I killed him. Apparently, he was already dead. So, I got to fix that at some point. And then my brother and his fiance are coming up here to visit for like a month and a half. So I'm not actually even thinking about drafting book 3 until they leave, which will be in January. But hopefully, once they go, I can just start nailing this stuff out. But the edit is super easy compared to the Trials of Ashmount, so I'm super excited because that was a nightmare to edit.
Well, how was your approach different this time?
Okay, so when I wrote the Trials of Ashmount, I took the approach of I don't want to have to deal with thinking. So what I mean by that is distances between places, like traveling. I didn't think about a consistent timeline, so I kind of just was like, if I keep it vague, no one's going to care or notice or whatever. And then I submitted it to my editor, and my previous editor happens to be one of those people that like really cares and focuses on that stuff. And that really sucked because while she had good points and I fixed it, it was a nightmare to fix because I had to go back and I measured my map and kind of had to figure out the distance between everything so that it would fit the story without having to rewrite everything. And that was a nightmare. And then on top of that, I had to kind of figure out a timeline. So I didn't have like how long a season was like figured out. I didn't have any cohesion, I guess, between the points of views. So, and I have 5 points of view, so it's kind of a nightmare to go back and fix. So with this book 2, instead of keeping everybody separate, so in book 1 I have like a heading. It'll say what season they're in and what place they're in. And in book 2, instead of putting the season with the character, I just made like each season a kind of a separate book within the book. So I separated it that way, and that kept things a lot easier. So the first book was kind of written in a nightmarish way.
Stumble and you fall forward, right?
Yeah, I mean, at least the book 2 was a lot easier to edit, though, so far. So.
And Matt on Books is here, and Matt Fantasy Book Reviews is here, and he's very close to 5,000 subscribers. So check out his channel, those of you who haven't already.
I'm already subscribed.
As Matt says, and here I am sitting here in 64-degree weather, thinking I may get hypothermia, and that it possibly can't get colder than this.
I had to look up the temperature. Oh, that's around 20 degrees Celsius.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's absolutely sweltering.
Yeah, that's like spring weather.
Poor man.
And Matt says it might be easier for John to write in a couple of sentences about how a character gets resurrected.
Fair, but not to hate on anybody, resurrection trope is like my least favorite trope.
Oh, okay.
I give an author one time. If they break it more than once, I generally am like, okay, I'm out.
You could just make them zombies.
Yeah.
What about the fake outs?
So that's different. If you can explain like why someone didn't die, then or they get stabbed and then you come back and they're like not dead. Like I'm okay with those. I prefer not a ton of faking out, but the resurrections, like you're confirmed dead and then they're confirmed back, drives me nuts. I just feel like it takes away all the, maybe not all of it, but a lot of the tension in a book. Of course, I'm talking as a grimdark fantasy person, so I completely understand why people would maybe disagree.
I imagine that like 100 years ago, that kind of death fake out would have been like super effective. But given the amount of stories that we've all seen in the meantime, until somebody's actually confirmed dead, I don't think anybody ever accepts that they may never return because it's been done so often. And
I think that's fair.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it's a different different place we all sit in with regards to that, you know.
And Author I Anonymous is here. No bringing characters back from the dead. It's not a pretty picture. I don't like doing it. That's the way it should be. Bringing characters back.
I struggle when. Did you guys see the show Heroes? It was not like the greatest show, but it really lost itself later on because of the resurrections.
Yeah, it's
That
like it
was
had
like-
a.
What's
Yeah, I was
that?
gonna say it had enough good ideas for it to be really interesting for a long part, and then the ideas sort of run out, and they had to then do the reimagining it or that kind of stuff all the time. It was like, this is not as clever as I had given it credit for.
Yeah, they just ended up resurrecting almost everybody, and so then it was just like, okay, that's when they lost me. When people just kept coming back, it was like, well, no one's dead forever, so what's the point?
Go ahead, Daniel. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
It is better that they don't take away like the weight of death, because it's supposed to be like the heaviest thing. So with people coming back all the time, it just it takes a lot of that away. I have a question for the two authors though. You were talking about how you weren't that meticulous about the weather, like what time of year it was. What are you meticulous about that you enjoy, that you don't even think about it, you're just super meticulous about? What's the thing you like to write so much that you don't think about being meticulous, you just are, if that makes sense?
Good question.
You want to go first, Thomas?
Sure. Thanks a lot.
I can go. It's not a big deal. But...
I think what I mostly get obsessed with is just like character banter, or just like everyday lives of the character, that like getting involved in their personalities and stuff like that.
That's cool.
For
Like
me,
the
it's would
friendships and everything
be.
like that.
I think I agree a lot. It's like characterization for me. I'd also say the magic system in my book, I kind of put a lot of effort into. But mostly, I think it's creating unique and memorable characters was like the thing that I really wanted to do well, and that's what I tried to do well. Whether or not I succeeded is a whole different thing, but that's what I put my effort into. So if I failed, that sucks.
So, Katerina, as a reader, what are you meticulous about when you're reading? What's important to you? What bothers you if it's not done with care?
I mean, is it cliche to say I'm a character-driven reader? I think that's generally, like, depth in characters is probably the one thing I care about the most in books. The world building would probably be the second thing. Like having a world that has a history, that has some social structures, political structures. That's the combination. I think those are like the two most important factors. Those are the things that I enjoy. And like, you know, like if you take The Prince of Nothing, you can see why I like that series so much.
Yeah.
That's actually a really funny point about world building, because I hear that word a lot. A lot of people really like world building, and I'll be the first to admit, before I really published a book, I heard that word. I never really understood exactly what it meant, and so I didn't really go into writing my book with like, I better do some world building. I just kind of went naturally, and of course this is all subjective, so a lot of people that read my book said that I really did well in world building, which shocked me because I didn't really plan it. and I was really surprised. I kept saying, "Wow, he did a really good job world building," and I'm like, "I did? I didn't even know what world building was." So it's kind of funny how that worked out.
I wonder if the phrase world building means different things to different people. You know, some people can talk about world building in the sense of like creating a location in a space, whereas I think for me, it's about creating a world with different possibilities. So it's never really clear what the outcome's going to be because you set up either a political system or a thematic system that says that this could happen or this could happen, or still gives the author some space to kind of throw something unexpected at you, and you go, "Oh, I didn't actually realize that was a thing or a possibility in this world." And by doing that, you've added another layer to what's possible in this world. So,
What about you, Hans? What's important to you? What are you meticulous about as a reader?
Well, I enjoy a good setting. I'm very immersive reader, so I need a good setting. So for me, the side characters and the world around the main characters are most often more memorable than the main characters to me. Like the main character can be a vessel for a story, or I don't mind that as much, but the world and the situations around it need to be believable. That's why I like the Dandelion Dynasty and Stormlight Archive so much, because the biology and the politics around the characters feel alive in those stories.
What about you, Daniel? What are you meticulous about as a reader?
I just like to be challenged. Like after I read a book, I like to still think about a book. So I don't want the story to be real base, like Louis L'Amour. You can read it in a day. It's just a lifetime story. I like it to be something that makes me like reflect on my own life. So I guess a lot of that would be prose. I guess prose would be important to me in that aspect.
And
I
let
get
us know.
that world building could like mean a lot of things. I think almost any prose can actually mean a lot of things. Setting can mean a lot of things.
I agree.
And let us know in the chat what you're meticulous about. We can discuss it. And I Anonymous commented, once we have confirmed recognizable body parts being shown, bodies floating by the docks, that gives that character is dead. Give their lines to the living.
I agree.
And he also comments, actually, those who don't go overboard on the world building do better because they don't overcomplicate things that don't matter. When beta reading, I find a lot of people overbuild their worlds.
So I actually have something to say on this. I used to be an admin on a writing group, and a lot of people that haven't published get so stuck. Maybe published is the wrong word. A lot of people who haven't actually finished a first draft, they get really stuck in just world building constantly. I see people are like, well, I keep trying to write my book, but I have 30 pages of world building notes and I'm not done. I'm like, what are you doing? Get the story out. No one wants to read 30 pages of world building. Even, I know that they're probably for the author, but still, like, there's a point where you need to just start writing the book.
Do you agree, Thomas?
Yeah, and I think I know what group you're talking about. I've
Fancy
rarely
Writers
posted in
Forever?
it, but yep. And yeah, a lot of people just will world build for years and just talk about having like multiple binders, but never move on past that. Just, it's good to do some of it to begin with, but eventually you got to stop and just start writing, and then let your writing do some of the world building too. Like you could always add to that later.
Yeah, the best kind of world building the best kind of world building is the drip feeding world building.
Yeah, I think so many people are trying to emulate Tolkien, which is a huge mistake in my opinion, because I just think that was his kind of like specialty, and like if you're not at that type of level, then maybe don't be. I don't
But he
know.
also did it over multiple books in a very long period of time. It wasn't like, I mean, I know he did plan out ahead, but he did it in very short form version, kind of did proof of concept, and then started to build it out and make it bigger over a very long period of time. And he had to get justification or feedback to say, actually, this what you're doing here is good before he goes all in on it. People like it. So.
Our age of authors that do that, I think, we're all Dungeons and Dragons players. So they've all also been building their worlds for 30 years, just in their own head, for their own other purposes. I feel like Erickson did that, right? Didn't he play Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
And Baker. So it seems like that a lot of people build the world, and then they had so much fun as a kid building the world that they'll just write a story in it.
I think that there's a lot of authors that their worlds are kind of from role playing. I think wasn't Nicholas Ames? I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but I think his world was from his D&D campaign as well, maybe.
It's heavily D&D, like very influenced, and just kind of like a shout out. It seems like I actually just finished Bloody Rose today.
Oh,
the second book.
That's funny.
Oh, nice. Just want to say hi to Covers with Cassidy. Thanks for coming by. And Anonymous mentions, no one wants 30 pages of info dump. I had one whole dump on a sewage system of the world. I was just like, this character is going to spend a lot of time in the sewers. Then why? But then D&D players also keep a very static, understandable system that everyone relates to, and as opposed to creating new ones.
Yeah, I think a hot take is that I actually prefer that people don't use D&D as an influence, but it's because I get, I'm going to say the wrong word, I think, here, because it's not necessarily true, but I've kind of gotten sick of the influence. It's not that I'm sick of it, it's just like, I can't think of another word, I guess. It's just, I don't know, cliche maybe?
Trope. It's just like a
Tropey.
common trope.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, I prefer like, this is going to be the wrong word too. I was going to say originality, but like you can still be original with a D&D setting.
But D&D is like a known tool set, if that makes sense. If you were just using the same tools all the time, and you kind of, I think the reader has an expectation that they know what's going to happen in the world. I think it goes back to what I said a second ago. Your ability to really be creative within that is kind of constrained by what you're initially set out to do in some way, which is why, when you read a book or read a series of books and you find that the world changes from what your expectation is, I think that's really interesting because it fires the imagination to go, oh, well, if that's possible, then actually what I thought could have happened in this story totally changes, and then therefore, in my mind, becomes a lot more fun to read.
Kind of a starting point to know where, kind of a little bit more familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's an argument to be said for that. A lot of people want to read familiar stuff.
They do.
And
Yeah.
That's cool. I think, there's so many reasons why people read. I personally prefer something that I haven't maybe seen before, or don't know kind of what's out in the world. That being said, I think you can still write a really interesting and surprising world that's set in like a D&D thing. I just don't know that a lot of people do in the way that I would like. Trying to not sound like an asshole. And I really don't mean like I'm not hating on it. I'm really not. I've enjoyed plenty of books set in like these worlds. So I think I might be sounding more critical than I actually am, but I'm having a hard time figuring out the words to phrase what I mean, I guess.
I think I think D&D is considered base level fantasy in this current age. Like everyone knows D&D, so it's like the base level. So if an author sticks to the base level, then we see it as unoriginal, while it's more like they just do the basic stuff, and that's okay. We like reading that sometimes, but we like people that invent something else or something on top of that base level. It's like if you eat a recipe bland or you use a few spices. Like they're both edible, but one is better than the other.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'm sure there's plenty of books I've read that are influenced or inspired by or set in D&D worlds that I love and don't even realize it. It's just, I think, if I know it and I can recognize it, I tend to prefer other stuff. But again, I still really enjoyed the other. I grew up and I read Dragonlance and thought that was awesome. So, I have enjoyed the D&D stuff before.
I know we've talked about this, but the Expanse book series is also based on a D&D game, even though it's a sci-fi retelling. But the character tropes and the archetypes that they use are very much based from their D&D characters that they'd set up.
Yeah, we have. And the more I read of those books, the more I appreciate the TV series. They did such a good job with that adaptation. It's crazy.
It is.
In fact, it may be better than the books.
No comment.
Without saying too much about it, I think they give the actors the opportunity to add something to it. Rather than just being a retelling of the story or dramatization, you give the situation where somebody can add layers to it by a performance. Like I think we talked about the fact that the drummer of the character drummer wasn't actually written that way in the books. But when you get an actress that owns the space as much as you have, you give that character bits from the books from different characters to kind of put together and go, here, you're doing such a good job with this. Let's use this power to kind of tell a better story or a slightly different version of the story. I think it's a really cool idea.
That actually makes me want to ask you all a question then, off of what Chris just said. When it comes to adaptations of known properties, so like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, whatever, do you guys prefer that they stay as close to the source material as possible, or do you like it when they kind of have some creative changes / liberty without, this is the key, without shitting on the actual source material? Because I personally I really liked Game of Thrones, and I actually kind of liked a lot of the changes they made in some of the earlier seasons, which might be a hot take, but I really didn't like the whole I forgot her name now for some reason, but the Stark mother storyline, Lady Stoneheart. I didn't like that so much in the books, so I kind of don't mind the changes in the show as long as they aren't like ruining the world, I guess. What do you guys think?
Katerina, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Well, thanks for putting me on the spot. I think I generally prefer if changes are made to the adaptation. I mean, it's not necessary, but if you're not making any changes, then why would I watch the show? I can just go and read the book. Whereas even if you are loosely inspired by a book, but you create your own story based on that, then that to me is more worthwhile than just watching something I've already read. And I mean, sure, like some changes can be for the better. Like one example I can think of is the adaptation of Watchmen, the graphic novel. I actually prefer, I know it's very loyal to the comic, but they changed the ending, and I actually kind of preferred the ending of the film to the comic.
Interesting.
Interesting is right, because
I agree.
I think this probably splits a lot of opinion, but I absolutely wanted to turn off the TV and the movie at exactly the point they changed it, because to me the essence of what made Watchmen great for me was the ending. It was that revelation at the end of what the ultimate aim was the ultimate body was trying to do. But that's the difficulty with adaptation, isn't it? It's because actually when we read source material or we go for source material, what we enjoy about it differs from person to person. So if somebody's come along and going to change something, they're obviously going to change some aspect of something that somebody loves in some ways. So I wouldn't like to do it. That's for sure.
I thought the change of the movie was much better than the book. And the whole I won't spoil the comic, but there's some things that played into the end in the comic that didn't really make sense. That didn't need to be there, but I won't say too much about it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Hans? What do you mind changes and adaptations?
Well, just like Katerina, I think it needs to be changed a bit to make it interesting. And I think going from a written format to a visual format, you need to change some things because you can't look in people's heads and stuff. So you need to change stuff. And I don't only read fantasy; I read very widely. I really enjoy children's books as well, and they often get animated adaptations, and I like those most often because they try to cram the story in a different time frame than the original format. So they either lengthen it, which is one of my favorite things. I think all of my favorite adaptations are all short stories that they've adapted to the big format and lengthened them and extended them, so you can give a personal view of the author. Like one of my favorite movies is Walter Mitty. I forget the full name.
Secret Life of.
Yeah, Secret Life of Walter Mitty. And it's a short novel that's only like a few pages long, so it's cool that they add such a different take on it while keeping true to the story. So, yeah, I haven't seen a lot of popular adaptations because I want to read the books first, but that's my general view on adaptations.
What do you think, Daniel?
I guess I have a nuanced view of it. It depends on if it is a hit or a miss for me, but I think staying true to the original is like as true as you can is the best method of adapting something, because I'm gonna say 90 to 95% of the people won't read the book. People don't read the book. So if we're not going to stay true to what the book was for the majority of people who see it, the movie would become more true. The ending that the author didn't choose would become the truth. If that makes sense. But I've seen adaptations that I liked better than the book, and I've seen it go the other way. It all just depends on the material and how it's done, I think.
I find I'm way more forgiving of it outside of genre shows. So if you have an adaptation of a crime story or something that really is set in the real world and they've taken some artistic license with that, I'm way more forgiving of saying, right, okay, they've given that opportunity more room to grow there, or that was a minor character in the novel, but actually they've made it a much larger character, taking on the role of other ones. But things that are things that I love, I often think the adaptation is made for not me. You know, it's obviously made to expand the audience. So if I'm saying to someone, oh, this is one of my favorite books, you should watch the show that's coming out, and then the show comes out and it really messes again with that idea of what I loved about that show, and they're like, did you really like that? And like as if it's some sort of reflection of my recommendation. Not mentioning the Wheel of Time TV show season 1 in any way, shape, or form, but yeah.
I think there's a yeah, but I think there's a good point to be made here, because a lot of fantasy novels we know them because of their fantastical elements, and those are often what's cheaped out on the end. Those are often the things that are cut away or made cheap because that's expensive. And when you see such an adaptation, you can see the monetary reasons behind cutting or changing some things, and that's what irritates me sometimes. Because in a normal, like what's mentioned in the chat, it's Shakespeare plays, for example, or musicals or stuff that's been adapted several times. It's just interesting to see the changes that are made, but because they're set in the real life world, it's not as impactful, I feel like.
And Yolene, thanks for coming by.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. I didn't want to miss this, so I'm a little bit late, but very happy I can make it.
All right, glad you can make it. We were just talking about adaptations and whether we mind if an adaptation is changes aspects from the book.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
I'll let
So-
you think on your answer. And I don't want to put you on the spot right away. Thomas, what do you think?
I guess it depends. Like sometimes if I'm especially close to the original book or something like that, I might get a little bit annoyed. The Watchmen is an example that, like the ending of that when I saw the movie, I was like, I hated it, but I also get it. But I just love the ending of the comic so much.
Yeah.
But at the same time, now, like nowadays, I try to just take the two as completely separate things. Like this is a show, this is a book. It's supposed to be based on it, but I don't expect it to be the same. And as long as they at least try to get some like the basic themes accurate, some of the world accurate, you have to judge them on separate scales because it's a whole different medium. It involves so many different things, and trying to cram a book into a few episodes is difficult. Or at least I'd imagine. I never did it, never want to.
What did you think, Yulene?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'm always very forgiving when it comes to adaptations. It's not a one-by-one comparison. It's a different medium, so you can't make it exactly the same. And I even sometimes like it when it is different, because when you've read the book and it's exactly the same, you know what to expect, and there's nothing new to it. But it can be a bad adaptation, and just like an original series can also be bad. But if it's different from the book, I don't really mind that much. But I'm also not really a super fan about anything, so maybe that's also a reason why I don't really care that much.
That's actually funny because I would say I'm a super fan of some things, but I actually prefer when they differ because I don't want to experience the same thing twice.
It's also an interesting point that Thomas made. Like, if you have those different endings, and say Watchmen's a good example, well, now we have two endings of that story, and I can love the book ending, and somebody else can love the movie ending, and we all still like the story. So actually, it actually served its purpose in some way by giving people options for which version of the story they want to own, which I think is quite cool.
Sometimes I think of an adaptation as a second pass at it. So sometimes you can fix things that you wanted to change from the book. So I'm sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
I was going to circle back to Dungeons and Dragons and how everything is an adaptation off of that, right? But some of them are good and some of them are bad, and they can be quite different too, even though it's kind of the source material.
Just want to say hi to Spectre. Thanks for coming by, Spectre. And Aaron had a question. If you take something like Shakespeare plays, imagine if they had been performed in the same way when they were written, would they have endured? So it seems like I think is it like the stories are always evolving and changing over time, I think too. So
I literally have just done one of my lessons this week in class on retellings of classic stories and using the tropes of famous stories. So I'd given people the option of the original Frankenstein story, which is obviously written in 1818, and the tropes of that, and then the modern retellings that have done of that, and actually how they can wildly differ, how they can go different genres, etc. So things like RoboCop and whatever else are basically Frankenstein stories, but actually retold for a totally different genre or audience. And actually how interesting they can still be, even though you sort of know the story.
And I think that's a popular genre these days. like Madeline Miller, Cersei, or Song of Achilles, or there's so many young adult Beauty and the Beast retellings these days. Or somehow these stories, people like the expectations they get from a story, and they know the general line it's gonna take, but then they like when there's some variations on that theme. So I think that's why they endure. Like, how would kids nowadays know Greek mythology if they hadn't read Percy Jackson? Like, these things are important to keeping all the stories up to date, in my opinion.
Spectre commented, sometimes I like when a movie is a little different than the book. When I read the book, it's like you get bonus scenes.
I like that idea. You can even extrapolate that to retellings or remakes of TVs and movies. You can think of the initial groan whenever they say they're going to remake insert X property here, and people go, why does anybody need to remake this? The story was already perfect the way that it was, or everything, and then it comes along and people will judge it in its own merits thereafter.
I think we get attached to stories, and what they, even if we wouldn't subjectively wouldn't like it as much, we still get attached to them, and it becomes a nostalgia thing. We just like it because that's what it is, and that may not be the best choice for it.
I mean, ultimately, I think they're just trying to bring more people to it. It's all about money. So putting it on screen, you get a lot more people. I think it's basically just that.
I mean, and I think it works. Like, I don't think I would have read a Game of Thrones if I didn't hear that the HBO was adapting it into a TV show. Because at that age, I was still reading Aragon and Twilight books,
That's awesome, because when I was a kid, I grew up right when, the Harry Potter phase was starting. And I think it was 2 or 3 books that were out when the first movie came to theaters. I can't remember exactly, but I know a few years prior to the movie coming out, I got the first book in the series for Christmas from some random family member. And I remember well, I can't remember who it was, sorry, but I opened it and I was like, wow, this looks awesome. I'm going to read it. And for the one person who hasn't read Harry Potter, the first chapter or two when you're like a 10-year-old is kind of a struggle if you don't know what the book is about. So, and it's kind of weird. And so I kind of DNF'd and said, I'm not getting back into this series ever, because screw it. And then my friend was like, let's go to the theater. And I was like, cool. I'll always go to the theater. I don't care what we're watching, because my mom will give me money for food. And so I was super excited, right? It's like the same thing when I was a kid. I'd always went to sport games because I'd get money to get food, but I hate sports. So I'd go wherever my friends wanted to if I was going to be able to get some money for food. So I went to the theater and they're like, oh, by the way, we're watching Harry Potter. And I almost died. I was like, I don't want to see crap. And then I saw the first movie and I was like, oh my God, that was way different than I thought it was going to be. So as soon as I watched that movie, I read the entire series and bought every single book that came out as like it released. I think it was the next 4 that came out after the movie. I might have that wrong. But so I think that the movies and TV shows can definitely bring a lot more people to the books too, for sure.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't have received that book from a random family member, would you be an author now?
Oh, yeah, I don't think that Harry Potter changed me like that.
Are you
I
sure?
don't-
It sounds like it's
More
pretty-
hot
Unicorn
takes.
dying.
Yeah, I don't know why I ever thought I should start writing, but I've been writing since I don't know, 7th or 8th grade maybe. Like seriously, like trying to write something. I don't really know why that desire started. Actually, I think I do. I think it's because I kept reading books that were super predictable and cliche and tropey. and there were moments where even as a child, I would in my head kind of be like, "Oh, okay, so this is going to be the ending of the book," and
Mhm.
Aragon is one of those examples. And I hated that book. No offense to people that like it. It's just it wasn't for me.
I'm not gonna defend it.
To be fair, I did really like the first half of Eldest, and then the second half really, again, I think it was the first half. I don't remember. I was like, what, 12? I don't remember, 13, 14, 15. And I'm old now, 34. So it's been a while.
Give me a break, Joe. Over 34. My God.
Yeah, get out of here.
To be fair, I feel old, okay? This is my truth, damn it.
Aaron had a good question. Any books you all would love to see adapted that haven't been yet?
First Law.
Yes. Great choice.
I think that would be very easy to adapt, like, or to do a good job of adapting it. It's very cinematic.
I also think they could do a decent Name of the Wind like show or something.
I thought they were planning on one of those years ago, but
Oh, maybe.
I remember hearing that there was like a series and a movie planned.
Well, the problem with this is that they buy the rights to all these things, and then only like 20% of them actually get made. It's really a giant waste of money.
Yeah.
It's sad too, because when it gets optioned, they have the rights to it, and the creator can't do anything with it. It's like in this holding pattern. So I wonder how many of these series get wasted on the shelf, just waiting for something to happen that never happened. It's kind of sad.
Countless.
But yeah. What about you, Daniel? What would you like to see adapted? I think I might have an idea.
I think that would be too hard. I think maybe like the Gentleman Bastard series might be cool.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
It has enough intrigue, and the like friendship bond would be cool. Since I've watched it and I know what happens, I would want them to change the end, though. Maybe that's one that's really based on the intrigue.
The problem
What about
with
you,
that
Katerina?
one, though. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Daniel. Or go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm still thinking. I don't think I necessarily want and for any of my favorite books to get adapted. Like if it happens, I'll probably watch the adaptation. But lately, I've been actually craving more for original TV shows. To be honest,
Hot
'cause I
take.
feel like a lot of the things I've been watching are either adaptations or remakes, and it's getting a little bit boring.
I have a question for you then. Do you know of any original fantasy shows? I'm trying to think of any and struggling. I guess Vikings, kind of, but
See?
I think they're all adaptations, right?
Is C an adaptation? I don't know.
No, C's an
Oh,
original.
Yeah. I thought C was, isn't that a
It's an original by Steven. Well, it's dystopian. Like that dystopian thing is like it is a future thing, but it's like a regressive future because it's dystopian, in that it's kind of going back to mysticism and a lot of well-trodden fantasy tropes at that stage. But pure fantasy, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, it's tough.
I mean, fantasy, like original television fantasy series, that's hard, I guess, because you have to probably world build first, right? So that's an extra layer of work to put in. Yeah, I'm trying to think.
It would be awesome though to get some original fantasy.
It would, but it's a hard sell because fantasy adaptations are very expensive, and the reason that you would do an adaptation is because you're taking an audience with you, and they're doing the hype, they're doing the selling of the show while it's in production, whereas a completely new one is risky.
Would Buffy the Vampire Slayer be considered an original show?
I think
Or
so.
like anything by Joss Whedon, I guess.
Yeah.
What about Dragon Prince? You ever watch? Any of y'all watch that?
Mm-mm.
It was
Yeah.
on Netflix. It was people
It's
that
pretty
made
good actually.
Avatar and
Yeah, it's
animated.
pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that Chris had a really good point though, because it's like, if you don't have proof that this is going to sell, holy crap, making a fantasy show is expensive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Even think about Buffy series 1. The budget must have been about 3 potatoes, and it's not a good looking show, and it's not actually a particularly interesting show for the first series. But I think it was probably enough of a proof of concept for them to go, right, okay, give me some money now, and I think we could make this awesome. And obviously,
I wouldn't argue with that.
yeah.
I've never seen it.
I think it's more often that animated movies are fantasy originals, but those aren't series, of course.
Mm.
Yeah, animated, you could probably come up with quite a few examples, I'm guessing.
Yeah, because drawing a dragon is the same effort as drawing a person walking around. It's not the same, but it's similar effort. So,
Yeah,
I
well,
think
when
it's-
you're drawing everything, it's,
mhm.
you know, you're right, it's the same, but dragons are CGI otherwise. And if they're not CGI, then they probably look terrible.
I don't know. I say bring back just a bunch of puppet dragons and old school like 80s special effects. All for it.
Mm.
The claymation.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see like something like Beyond Redemption adapted.
Mm.
Yeah.
That'd be tough.
Dear
to do.
God, that would be a disgusting thing to watch.
Also
Yeah.
true.
Also, yeah, true. Yeah.
But in a similar way,
not
Rob Jez has War Eternal. That could, again, that singular character of carrying the show could be really interesting to watch. And having the very powerful female young character who's just burning everything around them, I think could be awesome.
Mhm.
Or even what are some other? Well, Prince of Nothing might be interesting to adapt. That'd be a tough one to adapt to. That'd have to be like a late night HBO kind of thing or something, because they'd have to change a lot to adapt that.
Yeah, I imagine it would get a lot of backlash because of certain things, or because of how the world is set up.
True. Yeah.
Am I right in saying there's a lot of like sexual assault in that book? I think I remember hearing that.
There's a lot of bad things in that book. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you know
I mean
how
it's
people reacted to Game of Thrones and the sex.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
pretty bad.
just in general, it's a world where women are treated pretty terribly, or kind of at the bottom of the society.
I think any upcoming adaptation of Mistborn that hits hard
Yeah.
might change this conversation all over again. Because
Yeah.
if Mistborn hits as hard as it probably should and will, then everybody will be running around scrambling for properties of a more lighter fantasy genre than the ones that are being.
Yeah, I was about to mention that, especially because it's in the works, so it's
Yeah.
coming. Yeah, that's one I would really think that would work in a TV setting, not in a movie setting. In a
Yeah.
TV setting, it would work really well. I have a few more, if that's okay.
Go.
I think one is an obscure novel. It's called A Book Dragon. It's about a dragon that survives into the modern age because it can shrink in size and grow and stuff, and it bonds with it like this monk that's writing a book in the medieval times. But it's interesting because it's taking a long time because it's hand painting all of the pages. Another one I would think would work well as a TV series is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I don't know if any of you have read that book. It's by Becky Chambers. It's about a bunch of aliens in a spaceship. They just take a very long trip in a long way to a small angry planet and just chat between all of the alien species. It's very interesting. Yeah, and Mistborn was the last one. And I now can use books I would love to see in a format as well, the Dandelion Dynasty. But then in Chinese cinema, so like these epic giant skill battles and stuff. That would be cool.
Yeah. Let me get into. Aaron had a question for you, John. Did you like the Aragon movie?
I never saw it, but I don't have to know that I'll hate it.
Austin says, "I feel you, John. I'm 27 and feeling old."
Wait until you're 30. It all hits you in the face.
Let's all
Just-
keep in touch.
Yeah, just wait. Yeah. Anonymous votes First Law and Children of Gods and Fighting Men.
Ah. That would be very cool.
I don't know if any of you have read The Winter Road by Adrian Selby. That'd be a good book to adapt, like a 1 or 2 season series,
No.
or even a movie.
That's a standalone, right?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
Anonymous would love to see The Gentleman Bastards adapted. I think it's two time frame setup would do well. I think the special effects for the orcs might be a little expensive, but
I think
otherwise,
the biggest problem with that is they will quickly catch up to Scott Lynch, and then we'll have a Game of Thrones season 8 possibility.
is Scott Lynch finishing that series, or I thought the trilogy was wrapped up?
It's not a trilogy; it's a 7-book series.
Oh,
7.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm
so-
thinking of a different series.
Yeah. Jonathan
Book
French.
4
That's
has
like-
been
Yeah.
forever.
There's like 3 books out, right?
The Throne of Emberlane
Think
is
so.
5 years late now.
I
Yeah.
thought the 4th one was supposed to be the last one.
No, there's titles for all. I think it's 7. I think there's titles for all of them already made. If you go to Wikipedia on Scott Lynch, you'll see them all. But yeah, Throne of Emberlin was 4, and then I'm like 98% sure there's 3 more. Or there's supposed to be 3 more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen? Because I could see it being like, okay, I'm done after this one because of the nightmare. You don't really know, really.
And Anonymous mentioned Vikings was an adaptation, just an adaptation of a very old book. So there you go.
Right.
The list gets shorter.
I
Curtis
did not know
Cassidy,
that.
yeah, the Dragon Prince is, I think, but it's animated. Charmed.
Charmed.
I think in a similar vein, Avatar: The Last Airbender is a very good show that was original at the time, but it's also animated.
Which one? Sorry.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah. Was it a book before, or was it a
No,
adapted
that
book?
was original at the time.
Oh. Austin, I would love Amazon to do something new instead of Rings of Power. Haven't watched, but got put up from what I've heard. Bleh.
Well, I have good news because next year the Fallout adaptation comes out, and they're working on a Mass Effect one. And hopefully they're both good.
Yelena, I think you're pretty reasonable with this kind of stuff. What did you think of Rings of Power?
I really didn't like it.
Okay.
And I have not read The Lord of the Rings. I've not read anything else by Tolkien. So it's not like I'm a super fan and some things are changed and now I'm offended. But it just didn't make sense. I watched the first 4 episodes, and after that 4th one, I thought, no. If this was an original series, nobody would watch it. So I'm happy for the people who enjoy it, but that just wasn't good.
I also
I
haven't
actually
read
quite enjoyed it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did watch both The House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. I understand and agree with a lot of the criticism of Rings of Power, especially when it comes to the writing. But there was still something about the story and the characters that I really got attached to. And I guess also one reason for me why I enjoy the show is that it's like, for me, television or film, it's audio visual medium. And the visuals for me can be quite important in a film or a TV show. and I don't think I've ever seen a TV show that looked so good on the screen. So even if there are certainly like some plot points that don't make sense or could have been written in a way that would make them more that would make the show flow more naturally, I still end up liking a lot of the characters and caring for a lot of the characters, maybe more than the characters on the House of Dragon. And the visuals
my
were
God.
like the visuals
take.
were amazing, and the music was great as well. So I'm open to fair criticism of the show, but overall, like, I was quite happy with it.
Wow.
I made it to the end, and I have to admit, it was my wife really enjoyed it, and I sort of hate watched a lot of it. But actually, once it got to the end, it was fine. Like I'm sort of I will watch the second series, and there's no doubt, Katerina, you're right. It is one of the most stunning looking things I have ever seen on the screen. And in fact, in some ways, I think it makes the films look poor in comparison. It's incredible to look at.
So I also haven't read any of Tolkien because I can't stomach his writing. It's
Just
just
hot
any-
take out. Hot take.
Yeah, I know. That's me.
You should get a bail for every time you have one, so we'll like have a border around the edge of the screen. John Hot Take incoming.
Yeah, true. He's just not for me. I'm glad that a lot of people like him. But I saw the first episode of Rings of Power. I was super excited for another fantasy show. But I, like Yoli, and I couldn't get over the writing, really. I really didn't like that. And so I stopped watching after the first episode. But I really wanted everyone that liked it to end up loving it, because even though I really despised it, honestly, I think that you want these things to succeed, right? Because if Rings of Power is a colossal failure, which I guess you could argue in some ways it was, but you don't want it to be, because it's just making every other fantasy adaptation or show that much riskier to make.
Yeah.
And that's not good for any of us.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Did you watch Rings of Power, Daniel? Did you check it out?
Not
No.
yet. I watched one scene that was pretty cool though. Probably the craziest scene in the show, so I guess they backed us into a corner where we have to watch it if we want more fantasy shows.
It is true.
Consensus is it needs views.
I'm angering the chat. I'll just say that it's not a Tolkien problem. It's anything written before like 1970s problem.
I do think tonally it's a bit out in its own now, though. Given a lot of the stuff that's been made now is sort of grimdark. It's very serious in a silly way, though. You know, everybody takes it super seriously within the world, but still everybody has the very pointy ears, the kind of things that have been made fun of over the years since. So it's like it creates this sort of this disconnect between watching it and everything else that's going on compared to the other things that are on screen at the time in the fantasy genre for me, you know.
I actually felt the opposite way.
Ah.
And I say that as someone who most like predominantly reads grimdark or like dark fantasy. Watching the House of Dragon, like as much as I totally respect the qualities of the show, it kind of felt like I've seen it before. Like the tone of the show, it felt quite repetitive. Whereas Rings of Power, even though I'm also not like, well, I don't want to say I'm not a Tolkien fan. I did read Lord of the Rings when I was a 9, and I have not reread it since. So it's almost as if I haven't read it. So I don't really consider myself a Tolkien fan, whereas more like Tolkien ignorant. But I still I enjoyed the show because the tone was different.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I watched Rings of Power, and I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I'm not a huge Tolkien fan. Like, I read The Fellowship and The Silmarillion because I forced myself to. And I appreciate the work, but it's just his writing style I don't really want to read, and I know the story, or at least the bulk of it. But Rings of Power I enjoyed. I mean, I'm not going to say it was like the best show ever, but it was good. House of the Dragon, I'm 2 episodes in, haven't gotten back to it.
Wow.
But also, I don't have HBO on my TV in my bedroom. So, and I'm not going down and watching it with my roommates.
We know
So
first
most
world
of the time when I'm
problems for
watching
sure.
TV, I'm about to go to bed. So it's partially that, but also, yeah, I wasn't as pulled into it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that we have too many House of the Dragon haters in here, because for me it was a 10 out of 10 season. But I do appreciate what Katerina said. I think that it did feel very familiar, especially in tone. Like, you're like, okay, we've been here before, and I mean, I still loved it, obviously. But I just thought the characters and the story was really interesting. But I do understand and agree with a lot of the criticism it gets too. But even with the criticisms, I was super happy with it. You know, after the ending of Game of Thrones, especially, like, I was planning on not watching the show, so pretty happy that it like brought me back in.
Anonymous had a comment. No, I don't want them to do a Mistborn adaptation. I do not see it adapting well because it's also dark and misty. And no, I don't see it costing way too much to do it right.
But they are making one, right? That's
Yeah, they
confirmed.
are. Yeah, they are.
Oh, they are?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson said they were talking about it with his own production company.
Yeah, he said he would be surprised if they weren't shooting it at this time next year or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and if someone bought the rights to Sanderson, you're not letting that lapse. That's like stupid right now.
Yeah.
Well, if Sanderson can do a crowdfunding for books,
To the
he can
level that he
crowdfund
did.
a movie.
Wow.
I mean,
yeah.
How much did he crowdfund for his books? I mean, how many millions?
What was it, like 20 million?
You can crowdfund, do an animated, or do, you know, I don't know. It might be tough to do with 20 million for a big budget movie, but
Like,
Right.
I do agree with that, Anonymous. It could, unless it's really expensive, it could be terrible. But what if it's awesome? What
Sorry,
if they
40
do
million.
give it the money? Yeah. Just 40. Just after.
Just 40.
speaking of 40, Aaron had a comment. 40 is the new 30, 30 is the new 20. I totally agree.
Crap, so I'm actually 40? Oh, 30 is the new 20. Okay, it keeps going
yeah, 30
down.
is the 20.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going backwards. Austin, so I guess Sanderson said that they were going to have a budget for his adaptations, that he isn't worried about them looking good.
But budgets do not make a good show.
No, that's true. They help, though.
Oh, they certainly help, and I bet it'll look spectacular even if it's the most garbage plate of a show.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's not.
I mean, nearly almost certainly the opposite's true. If it doesn't have enough budget to hit it, there's no chance of being of looking good, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of the most famous shows started off not very, like, big. Or at least, like, I remember season 1 of Breaking Bad looked terrible. And then it became Breaking Bad, and they finally started giving them money. Same with the bike show. Season 1 of that show didn't look good.
Sons of Anarchy?
Yeah, Sons of Anarchy. And then
show.
they get the budget to come afterwards,
That's
and
right.
everything starts looking significantly better. But the
Then you added
story
explosions.
drives, like, the people. Yeah.
Blow some stuff up, too. Anonymous said, yeah, and the backstory of Gentlemen Bastards will catch up with the main story, and then we have an Arrow problem. The flashbacks, I'm guessing. Chadia, what are you all reading at the moment? What's everyone reading? Not all at once.
Hans, go first there. Yeah.
So currently, I'm actually not reading anything. I mentioned earlier, my brother and his fiancée are coming up here to visit for a month and a half, and I just don't think I'll be able to consistently read while they're here in the way that I'd like. So I'm not going to read anything until they leave, but I'm super excited for them to leave because I'm going to jump into 2 series back to back, I think, that I'm super happy for. And the first is the Peter McLean series.
Oh.
The Priest of whatever. I forgot what
Priest of
the
Rose,
actual
Priest of
Rose,
Light.
Rose to the
Rose,
Rose
right?
Thorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Throne.
that's right. And then the other one is Robin Hobb's Live Ship Traders series.
Oh wow.
So I'm pretty excited to dive into those.
Wow. I've been influenced at the moment. I'm reading Augustus by John Williams, courtesy of Alan, and it's an interesting read, given that it's in letters format. The first 100 pages were, I wouldn't say I wasn't enjoying it, but it's dense. Like, it's super dense to the point that 20 pages and you're like, whew, I'm exhausted. To pick it up, but actually, once you get over that kind of first 100 pages, and it's only about 300 pages long, the book's quite easy to read after that. So I'm nearly finished it, but it's good.
Those
Well,
books
you,
are always interesting.
Will you
Also,
what do you
Austin.
reading? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Hans.
Austin in chat, we have a live chat about it on Sunday, so I think we'll save the thoughts for Sunday.
Oh, for Wall of Storms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hype.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. What about you, Katerina? What are you reading? Besides Thousandfold Thought.
Yeah. Besides that, I just started Invader, which is the second book in the Foreigner series by C.J. Cherry. It's a sci-fi series. It's I would call it like anthropological science fiction. There's a lot of focus. It's like a first contact story where a human ship crashes on a planet that's inhabited by this humanoid species. And they're basically trying to coexist and build some sort of relationships with the civilization, with the native civilization. And so there's a lot of like focus on like cultural differences, and there's a lot of politics, and a lot of like discussion about if you are a more technologically developed civilization, should you share your technology with the less developed civilization? What are the consequences of doing that? I mean, I only read the first book, just starting the second one. So, and it's a 20 book series, I think.
Oh
wow.
So I mean, I don't know how much I can say about it at the point where I'm at, but so far it definitely explores some interesting ideas. But it's a very slow series. Like you really you learn a lot about the cultural norms and the physiology and the relationships between the different characters and factions. So it's not for everyone, but if you're interested in that subgenre of science fiction, I think it's a pretty interesting series.
That's a long series.
Yeah, there seems to be 21 books.
Oh gosh.
Oh wow. It gets worse.
And it doesn't seem to be the finished yet, I think.
Okay.
It doesn't say the last book on Goodreads. Just it says the 21st book.
Oh, don't even tell me. Like I'm doing it. It's a buddy read that we're doing. We read the first one in January, like early in this year. We're reading the second book now. So if, like at this tempo, like at this speed, we're probably gonna it'll take us at least 10 years to finish.
Great, they'll only be on like 43 and not done.
Yeah.
And I mean, besides that, I was supposed to start Reaper Scale, but I postponed it. It was too soon.
What about you, Thomas? What do you just finished Rose? I forget the name.
I just finished Bloody Rose,
Bloody
so
Rose.
I'm not reading anything else just yet. I was thinking about getting back into Malazan, whatever however you pronounce it, and joining you on the group read. But I'm really bad about rereads when I have so many fucking books that I have to get to. So
Yeah,
I
it's
think
tough.
next I'm gonna just finish reading my second book again and get this shit done, and then get back to Peter McLean's series. I
Oh,
think
nice.
I have to get to the third book. I have it. I just haven't started it yet, and I love the first two.
Yeah, very easy reads.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris? What are you reading?
Augustus is what I'm reading at the moment, and then I plan to make an early start in Game of Thrones, I think, in early December. So we're ready for our discussion around that time. Which will be
Nice.
the first book will be a reread, and then everything else will be new after that.
Cool. Daniel, what are you reading other than Thousandfold Thought with Us?
Finishing that, I'm not reading anything else currently. Trying to decide if I want to start on the Wall of Storms, which is just intimidating, or if I want to read the first book in the Long Price Quartet, which is like a baby book. Might be fun. Or Beyond Redemption. One of the three I will be starting soon.
Nice. Yolene, what are you reading?
I'm currently reading Fool's Quest, which is by Robin Hobb. It's the second book in the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, which is the last trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings. So I read the first one, which is I don't know the names, but I read it last week, and normally I like to spread them out, but I just had to get into the second one as soon as possible. So I do think that I will finish the trilogy by the end of the year, and I'm also a little bit afraid because there were definitely some moments I'm listening to it on audiobook, so when I'm driving to work or from work to home, and there were a couple of instances that I just had to stop listening because I was so afraid of what was going to happen. So I think I will be. So I think I might be scarred for life, depending on what happens to the main characters. But I have to push through.
Wow. And Hans, you're reading Wall of Storms, right? We're about the same. I think about 150 left. What do you have left?
About 80 pages.
Oh, nice.
It's in the middle of the night now, so I'll probably finish it tomorrow morning. But and after that, I'm not sure yet. I think I want to read a graphic novel of some kind. Maybe Chew. Chew is fun. I want to continue that. Do you know that one?
Yeah. Yeah. I have issue 1 behind me. I never went any further with it, so yeah, that's an interesting one.
It's like about a detective who can, when he tastes food, he can know the origin of the food, so he uses it in crime scenes. So he eats bits of humans to see how they were murdered. It's a bit of a strange concept, but it works really well.
And John, you should start a book because it's a great way to get away from everyone if you have house guests. You say, I'll have to get this reading done, and you can like go out and then people leave you alone. So it's a great excuse to say, I really have to get this reading done.
Okay, but for what?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's okay though, because I just got Frosthaven in the mail, so that's what we're going to be diving into. So it's good.
Says Onward was a great original movie. Definitely a lighter tone.
I agree.
Mass Effect lost me at the ending of the third game.
You and a lot of people.
I'm still pissed about it. The reaction for that actually turned me off on the whole series. I didn't want to even bother.
It's really a great series. And the ending sucks, but...
Is the ending of 2 any better, though? I don't know. Mass Effect 1 is a fabulous story, an okay game. Mass Effect 2 is a great game, okay story, and Mass Effect 3 is Mass Effect 2 reskinned with an ending.
Yeah, that's true. I just think that the gameplay and the characters are so good.
Yeah.
And even the story to some points are great. And it's really, for Mass Effect though, it's the world that you're experiencing, and that's what's so like spectacular about it.
Yeah.
And Aaron gave up on Rings of Power like you, Yulene. Not a huge Tolkien fan. I couldn't get into it. Was so into Hot D at the time. So may come back to it once. Come down from that.
Yeah, I think that's also a big part of why Rings of Power struck me the wrong way even more, was because I was watching House of the Dragon at the same time. And I'm more a character-driven reader, and it's the same for me with series and shows. And Rings of Power is just much more plot-driven, which is fine, but I just don't really like that most of the time.
And Charlie had a question. Are you all non-Tolkien fans?
For
It does
sure.
feel a bit like a support group at the moment. I don't mind Tolkien at all. I mean, I quite enjoy him, but I did, when I read it when I was about 14 or 15, I did have a tendency to skip chapters or get halfway through a chapter and go, I think I can dump this chapter off. I don't need to get through all of this bit. Let's get back to the story.
And as I mentioned in chat, I love Tolkien, and I love when authors do all these sorts of nonsensical side stories that don't end up mattering for the story. So I enjoy Tom Bombadil that everyone hates, for example.
I was too young for Tom Bombadil. That's exactly the chapters that skipped. I just went, oh, what is this?
And I Anonymous has a question for the two authors, Thomas and John. I got a question. Would you like to see your books adapted to TV or film?
I have a very controversial answer.
We expect nothing less.
I know. Honestly, yeah, I would, and only for the check. I'm serious. If they were like, here's $5 million for these rights, I'm gonna say awesome, and if you fuck it up, that sucks for you. But I mean, I would love the money for an adaptation, so definitely. HBO, here's my number.
What about you, Thomas?
Yeah, I've been doing manual labor my whole life. Fuck it, give me the money. I'm tired, man.
Here's the question: what would be in your stipulations of things that they must do as part of your input? The kind of right. There must be a number of deaths of animals per episode or something for John. That's the minimum count.
Honestly, they could turn mine into the thing I would hate the most, which is like a super normal epic fantasy anime, because I don't really like anime myself, and I don't like the bland. Well, I find it bland. I'm not saying all epic fantasy is bland. I just find like normal.
That's not what I heard.
Normal fantasy to be kind of bland. Man, I'm just making enemies left and right tonight. Just remember, everyone, these are my opinions, not anyone else's, and we can still be friends. So yeah, they could butcher it as much as they wanted, and I'd still be happy because I got paid. And I know that's like the opposite of most creative-driven decisions that a lot of authors make, but I'm selfish and I don't care. I just want enough money to live the rest of my life happily, and if that's going to be from a crappy adaptation, I'll take it. Even better if it's a spectacular adaptation, obviously. But
it'll
wonder if
probably get stuck in development, and you don't even have to worry about it. No one will ever see it, and you'll get the
that's
money.
right, and you still get the money. That's
Wait, you still get the money in that situation? That's perfect.
Yeah, they give you the money as soon as they want to have the rights, and half the time it doesn't even get made. So honestly, if that doesn't happen,
you get paid and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and then you can sell them again once the rights lapse, I think. Although I think that's really hard to do.
Can you imagine the compilation videos of all your hot takes, though, if your
God.
hit, right?
We might have to do a compilation video of all of John's hot takes.
This is bad because a lot of my hot takes come out sounding way more harsh than I maybe intend them to. But it's just the way I speak. I'm kind of an all or nothing type person. And oops is what I'll say.
Jeremiah mentions it's okay. People are into different things. I have accepted the fact that I'm no longer the target audience for pretty much anything these days. The world moves on. And that's fair.
Yeah, I think that nowadays the culture has gotten really bad with like, if you don't like this, then I don't like you, or if you like this, then I don't like you. You see it in video games a lot, sports, politics, whatever. And I hate that. I just think that like we should be more tolerant of everyone's preferences and likes and opinions, and as long as they're respectful about it, I think we should be, perfectly happy. I think liking different things is awesome. That's what makes us different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Austin mentions, Hans, you definitely need to read The Hobbit. It's fantastic. The Silmarillion is challenging, but well worth it if you can enjoy it. Gave me a great appreciation and understanding of the world, and it's so epic.
Oh, definitely will.
Oh, okay. His
Wow, that's an
Sanderson's.
old comment.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch up. Trying to keep up. Between all the hot takes, it's hard for me to keep up with chat.
Yeah.
I apologize, guys.
I'm offended, Jeremiah, and everyone over 30 is a boomer. Oh yeah, this is an older. Yeah, I'm catching up, everybody. Wall of Storms in a nutshell is great. In a nutshell. Aaron is doing a reread of Assassin's Apprentice, hoping I'll stick with it at least for the first trilogy. Don't think I was ready for it as a reader on the first go. Covers with Cassidy, currently reading Burning Blade and Silvereye arc for book 3. CZ Cherry is a very underrated author. I just finished Daughter of the Forest. Yes. Some friends are starting Malazan and a read-along soon. Excited. I made this comment on the forum about all these new... I get... And I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way. I just mean, I think there's a lot of read-alongs from Malazan, and I think, like with our group, we had a big group to start out with, and we all just kind of fell off. And even I was like, I can't do this. I need a break. So I think it's kind of fun to see everyone start this read-along from Malazan, because they can be challenging. So especially in the first read. So I'm excited to see how those turn out.
It's difficult, I think, because Malazan is one of those series where it's definitely beneficial to discuss it with other people.
Yeah.
So in that sense, a group read or a read along is perfect. But at the same time, it's one of those that you have to do at your own pace. So it's difficult to have a schedule that works for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we had planned a book a month, and there's no way.
No.
There's no way. We're reading a book within the book. Now we're reading House of Chains, and we're taking about 3 weeks for each book in the book. And there's 4 books in House of Chains. And even that is a challenge. So, but I'm excited to see how the read-alongs go. It's exciting to see everyone else's take on it, because it's quite the read.
A book a month always seems manageable until you realize that it's the start of the next month, and you're like, I've only just finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's some books that are easy to, but
Yeah.
I don't think I've been able to finish a single Malazan book within a month, and I wasn't even reading anything else. I was just reading Malazan, and it gets worse book after book. It's like they just keep getting longer, and that's good.
I read the first book. I have a really bad history with.
Oh yeah. You've read it a couple of times. You bought the.
I bought the first book. Yeah, I think I told you this off stream. Maybe. Let's just put it out there. I read
Third
the first
time
book.
lucky.
Yeah, I read the first book. Well, no, I didn't read the first book. I bought the first book. I read, I don't know, 200 pages and threw it away. And then I bought it again and read part of it and DNF'd it and didn't throw it away. And then I saw on Facebook everyone talking about how amazing it was again, and I said, "Damn it, I'm finishing this book," and in anticipation of it being amazing, I bought Dead House Gates, and I forced myself to finish the first book, and I finished it, and I said, I didn't understand a damn thing in it, and I don't know where those 2 copies are now. I think I threw them away. I don't really know. I think I donated them. I didn't actually throw them away, but I don't think I own them anymore. It's just too much for me.
I actually
Yeah,
really like Dead House Gates, but
I didn't even try it. I finished the first book and I was like, okay, I'm out. I wanted to like it. And Erickson, let's not get this wrong. Erickson is an amazing writer, you can tell. But I didn't comprehend anything that happened. So I really think it was more of a me problem than an Erickson problem. Just too many undefined terms, or they were defined like once or loosely, and I'm one of those people that needs like reassurance or a little bit of repetitive references in a book before I kind of grasp the terms, if there's that many. And I am also not someone who's going to flip to the back of the book and check the references back there, because I find that annoying. And also, half the time you go back there, you end up on one of the last chapters and spoil yourself or something. So,
are you going to continue reading, Yulene? Or are you going to read House of Chains?
I don't know. I'm still halfway through Memories of Ice, and I think at this point I need to start over if I want to remember anything. So even though I liked this series more or less, I have too many other books on my shelf that I think I will like more. I think that Malazan is one of those series that I picked up because everybody told me how awesome it was. And if you continue reading, it's definitely worth your efforts. But if nobody else was reading it and I picked up Gardens of the Moon, I don't think I would have continued. So it's one of those cases where there are too many amazing books and I need to make sacrifices. So it's on my TBR, but I don't know if it will ever get read.
That's fair. What about you, Hans? Have you tried Malazan?
No, I don't think I have any.
Nope.
I think
coming
your
in.
mic is screwed up.
Density,
Yeah, you're coming in muffled.
yeah, and it's dense. Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Can you
Oh,
hear
there
me
we go.
better now?
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm not planning to ever, I think. It seems like a history book to me in its density, and there's like hundreds of books I could be reading, so I'm just gonna read other things that interest me and way more.
I think it'd be a quite interesting video series to kind of watch live streams of people doing read-alongs, having not read the book, and then trying to discern your own take on what the book is from those read-alongs.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have someone who has read this series before to help you along, because it's tough to keep up. But Hannah said, "Oh, I vote Wall of Storms. I read Grace of Kings and really enjoyed it." Yes, if you liked Grace of Kings, you're gonna love Wall of Storms.
It's only better, much better.
It's funny. I actually buddy read Wall of Storms by somebody who, together with someone who loved Grace of Kings, and he DNF'd Wall of Storms, and I don't understand because Wall of Storms is just 10 times better. And I didn't know that was possible because I already really enjoyed Grace of Kings.
Yeah, well, the story is very different from the first one, so if that turns them off, I can understand. But I agree, it's better.
Austin is excited for the Song of Ice and Fire reread. Going to start early because I'm a slow reader. Glad hopefully you're reading with us.
That's my feeling as well, Austin.
Eric is rereading some Black Company for a break after Unholy Consult. If you're rereading, if you need a break from Unholy Consult and go into Black Company, that's pretty heavy stuff. How's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. I had to put my son down, and that just took way too long.
It usually does, yeah.
I see John like
I just thought
know
I just thought the phrase was a bit not good. I sunk down. I was like, oh.
He was thinking euthanasia.
Dark start.
Not quite.
I'm sorry, it's the grimdark nature.
You can't trust the grimdark author.
You can't. You really can't.
Steve, there might be a bot in the chat later.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
There might be a bot in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Seems
Let me
only
scroll
ours.
down. Let me scroll down. Talking.
I'm
about
not sure,
yourself,
but
I'll
it's-
handle that. Yeah, I got it. Thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to catch
10
up. but-
grand. That is so cheap, my dude. 10 million maybe. Go for that.
Yeesh.
You can get more than 10 grand.
NC, you want to give us an introduction? Let us know about you and your work.
Yeah, hi, I'm NC. I'm Australian, as you might be able to guess from my accent. I write about complicated people that can transform into monsters, transform into werewolves. And yeah, I'm having a good time so far. My debut novel came out on the 16th of September, The Sword of Mercy and Wrath. I have a novella as well, and the sequel to The Sword of Mercy and Wrath will be coming out next year, hopefully, in May.
Nice.
Oh,
so
that's-
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was just gonna say that before I start reading the Hobb and McLean series, I forgot I'm supposed to read his. I have it.
Oh, here
You're
we go.
supposed to.
I have it right here.
Ah, there we go.
I won it in a giveaway on Twitter.
I thought you had this all planned.
No, I have my TBR list like that way. It's like this huge stack of books, and this is right on top because it's short.
It's quite short, fast-paced, I would say.
Nice. Thanks for making it.
All right.
That's cool.
We were just talking about Malazan and and the Dandelion Dynasty. Have you read Malazan, NC?
No, I've read Dead House Gates a few times. It's probably my favorite novel, well, like one of my favorite novels. But I tried reading the rest of them, and I was like, because I read it out of order. I didn't realize there was an order to them. And this was like,
Oh boy.
15 years ago. And I was like, this story is really cool. And then I tried going back and reading Gardens of the Moon, and I'm like, what is going on? Then I was like, I'm too confused now. But yeah, it's one of those things, like, I do mean to read the entire series, but who has time?
You
I
got
think
books
it
to
was
write.
someone said before, because I was kind of chilling in the I was kind of chilling in the chat before while I was trying to put my son down, and it's like you need to reread it almost to you need to read it once to have the basis to understand, and then read it again so that you can actually understand what the fuck's going on. So yeah, it's one of those huge commitments I don't really have time for anymore. But yeah.
Actually, that makes me have a question for everyone then. I'm a person who actually really hates rereading. Is everyone else in here basically good with rereading? I don't like to. I've reread Harry Potter a few times, but I think for the most part I'm just not into rereading.
I like the idea of rereading,
Yeah.
but I
Good
can't
idea.
read the book. I can't read the books that I already have. So, like, where does it go in? Like, I can think of some of my favorite, in my head, what my favorite books are. If you ask me to tell me what's great about them, I have long since that long gone from my memory. So the idea of rereading that is like, yeah, I want to know why I love this book, but at the same stage, I'm like, but yes, this pile beside my bed is enormous.
What about you, Yulene? Do you like to reread?
I used to when I was younger because I had to. If you only have a couple of books and you
Yeah.
get through them, you need to reread. At this point, like Chris said, I have so many books on my TBR that only the absolute best get a reread, and then enough time needs to have passed. Like now, I am going to reread The Song of Ice and Fire, but it's one of those series that I say is my favorite series of all time, and it's been 10 years. So it's time. But and then Realm of the Elderling, I am going to reread straight away.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to do that just for every book that I think is good.
Daniel, other than Prince of Nothing, do you like to reread?
Yes. It just goes back to books that make me think about things. Books that make me like ask questions of my own life. I think books like those are rereadable. Whereas like a book, I'm gonna say I probably wouldn't reread any of the Song of Ice and Fire books because I basically know everything that happens, and it didn't make me ask questions. But I guess again, if it takes him 15 years to finish the series, maybe I will have to reread them all just to remember what happened. But generally, I won't reread something that I think is easy. If that makes sense. Like a casual read. Haruki Murakami. I'll never reread a Haruki Murakami book.
What about you, Katerina? Do you like to reread other than Prince of Nothing?
I mean, in theory, yes. But there are so many books on my TBR that it feels like the new books just get higher priority over the rereads. But having said that, rereading The Prince of Nothing has been amazing. And I do generally find rereads good in that, I mean, I guess it's also related to just, if you read a book at a certain age and then you read it 10 years later, just the way you think about the world and of yourself and how you relate to characters and themes just changes. So I do enjoy rereads. I just don't have the time for them most of the time. It's usually a read along, or if someone asks me to reread with them, then I'll do it. But I try to put priority on books I have not read yet because there are so many.
Yeah. Well, you, Hans, you like to reread?
Actually, yes. I used to do it a lot as a kid. Similar to Yelene, you only have a few books, so you reread a lot. I don't do it as often in the last couple of years, but I really enjoy rereading, especially the shorter children's books that only take 1 or 2 days to read. Just because reading is fun for me, and reading doesn't always have to be new. It just has. Same with rewatching a movie. Like, sometimes you just want the same comfort read.
Chris?
Yeah, like I said, I love to do rereads. I love doing a reread and doing something with it. Like rereading as part of a group read and then getting other people's opinions about it is awesome, because sometimes you read something and you talk to somebody and you go, I'm really dumb. I got none of this out of this, the previous read of a book that I quite liked, and now I'm like, oh, no, I really like it, or somebody adds another layer to it. It's really fun.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Thomas? Do you like to reread?
I like the idea of it, but yeah, the same as other people, there's so many new books that I want to read that I have a hard time going back to something I've already read because I already know what happened. And there's so many other things I'm looking forward to. Every once in a while, if it's like an audiobook I've listened to when I'm at work, I'll toss it back on, listen to a few chapters. But then I'll always end up moving on to something new.
NC, what about you? Do you like to reread?
Yeah, I think I was the same as Julian and Hans. Like, when I was a kid, I had Harry Potter, and that was it. And I was just like, I just had those on repeat for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And then, recently I've just had no time. But I think if I was to reread something, it would be probably the Stormlight archive. Just because like there is so much to explore and dive into, and like the different, the whole world has all these little secrets that if you pay attention, I think it can really pay off. And yeah, I think it goes back to that, like I think it was Daniel that said that, that if there's something to find, something to explore, then definitely I'll have another read of it. But yeah, and the rewards that paying attention. Yeah.
And you missed the last question, but what are you reading now?
I am reading actually an arc by Kian. I think it's Kian.
Yeah.
11th Cycle. It's fantastic. I cannot state that enough. Like, it's really good. I'm also reading an arc from Thomas Howard Riley, The Monsters We Feed, as well. And that's I've just started that, but that's already brilliant. Like, I read the first bit of this We Break Immortals, and that's great as well. And it carries that same voice. It's a little different, I think, from what people have said, but I'm excited to get into it.
We Break Immortals is chunky.
It is. I have it right there.
It's waiting to be read, I think.
11 Cycles chunky as well. It's a massive book as well, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 500, I think.
873. Yeah.
Oh, 873.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Hans.
My internet is good, so I'm thinking.
We can't hear you again.
This is all.
You're
Blink
underwater.
fast if you need help. Yeah.
Microphone.
Yeah, if you can. Yeah, you're coming in muffled. You're coming in muffled if you can hear us.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I said my internet is fading, so.
Oh.
Cool.
I'll just say goodbye.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Hans. Thanks for coming by.
Bye,
Take
Have a
care,
good
Hans. Take care.
Also mentions I like to reread books. I love, but I rarely do, and would rather read new books. Something that's kind of a pretty big popular opinion. Aaron's not a big rereader unless it's been too long. I want to keep up with the series. And Eric brings up a good point. They're good for a mental reset to get over a slump.
Yeah.
That's funny because I think that would have the opposite effect on me. I think that'd put me more in a slump.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't get that much enjoyment from rereading. I find it more tedious and like work-inducing, I guess, because I know everything that's going to happen. There's no surprise, and that really bores me. So I think that would really like make it harder for me if I was already in a slump. I think when the Winds of Winter comes out, or the next book by Patrick Rothfuss, I'll probably reread the 5th book in Game of Thrones, and I'll probably reread both of Rothfuss's books. But other than that, I don't know. The idea of rereading just like fries my brain.
I don't know if everybody rereads the same, but for me it's more skim reading and just waiting until I have my favorite parts, and then I do reread those. But I don't read everything as I would on a first time.
I think that makes sense.
I think I'm the opposite. Or, I mean, I have not reread many books recently, but at least with the Prince of Nothing read along, I find myself, because I already know the story, I don't really pay attention to it that much, but I focus more on the details, like the themes or the world building, things that I didn't necessarily pick up on when I read the first time. So usually I think rereads would probably take me longer to get through because I'm focusing on all the other things besides the plot and the twists.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, ever since I started writing, I've reread some of the, like, even the Stormlight stuff, and it's been interesting to try to reflect on, like, how the writer constructs the sentence or constructs the paragraph, and really dive into that sort of aspect of things. And that's been interesting to reread my favorite books and go, okay, that's actually how they did that.
Mm.
And I don't know if that's relevant for the guys that don't write, but maybe, I don't know, sort of, yeah, it's an interesting reflection that I've had recently.
I like that idea, and see, because when you rewatch something, that's the comment there. I'm one of those people that's fascinated by how somebody goes about constructing a story. You know, how far out does a major event get foretold or foreshadowed or something like that? So actually, how do you insert that in, and whether it's obvious that it was planned from the start or not? Yeah, I think that stuff's really cool.
Does everyone else rewatch TV shows or movies?
I typically don't, for the same reasons of books. I find it really boring. But I did rewatch Lost and hate the ending a bit less. So I still hate the ending. Oh, really? I hated it less. I still didn't like it, but I thought it made a little bit more sense.
I actually didn't mind the ending. I mean, they backed themselves into a lot of corners.
Yeah.
So
Get out of this chat, Steve.
Yeah.
It was tough.
I'm a Steve. When I went into the last episode of Lost, I had no concept that they possibly could end that series well. I just thought they had no way out of it. So the fact that there was an ending, and it was like, okay.
I think that all of the last season made it pretty obvious they had no idea what they were doing.
What they're doing, yeah.
When I watched the last few seasons as they aired, and season 6 started, and it was just immediately oh no, they don't know what they're doing. And every episode, it was just kind of more and more obvious that it was not going to end well, and then it didn't.
Well, I think what probably happened, and I don't know for sure, but they probably had an idea for a story, and then once it was successful, the network said, okay, take these 5 seasons worth of material and make it into 9. And they're like, okay, we have to fill in seasons and seasons of stuff, so they just there was a few episodes and seasons in there that were just filler. They just didn't add a whole lot, and they backed themselves into more corners with this filler that they added in. So it's just
Damon Lindelof said that's exactly what happened. In fact, there's a couple of episodes throughout some of the series of shows that they all hate watched, even as they were being aired. They were like, "Oh my god, did we actually put time and effort into producing this? Because it's dreadful."
The first 3 seasons of that show are some of the best TV show stuff ever made, and then after that, it was you could tell they lost it.
It was the hero's problem in a lot of ways that you were talking about earlier on, John. You know what I was saying about world building. Every episode of Lost seemed to give you another bit of world building to say, actually, what you thought were the confines or the rules of this world are no longer true. So actually, your brain expands. And at a certain point, they put that much stuff on that you realize actually nothing matters anymore, because it's just nonsense at this stage. There's no rules about time. There's no rules about place. There's no rules about. So actually, you've lost me to a certain extent.
I think you're right. They just started adding in way too much.
Yeah.
Did the rest of you watch Lost?
I
saw
did.
first couple seasons, and that was it.
Same.
Good move.
Yeah. I was down missing nothing. I don't know.
I did finish it, but I remember almost nothing that happened on the show. I mean, I do vaguely remember the ending, but the stuff in between, I don't.
All I remember was that they never paid off the smoke monster. And that just annoyed the shit out of me. I was like, what is this smoke monster? Why are they... I was so invested into finding out what the hell this thing was. And then they never showed it and never told us what the truth was. And I was just like, what?
By and large, they didn't resolve anything. Any of the big questions were just they just added more questions on top so that you kind of forgot about the questions previously.
Yeah. Well, they moved towards a lot of religious answers, which didn't fit the show. I don't think, anyway.
What about you, Daniel? Did you see Lost?
A little bit of it. I barely remember it.
Yeah.
I strongly got disappointed in, like, really fast, just how little payoff every mystical thing had before they were moving on to the next mystical thing.
That's fair.
Yeah. And Austin mentions, NC, you definitely read things differently when you're a writer. I wonder if, for Thomas and John, do you wish you could turn off that part of your brain that you look for things when you read, that you just want to enjoy it and not break it down and kind of dissect?
So
Hot take incoming. Here we go.
I know a lot of authors say that they read differently, and I believe them. I just don't know how much it has changed my reading. Like, even before I wrote, I still noticed spelling or grammatical errors. I still noticed issues with, whatever. I could still tell a book was bad if it was bad. I think that as a writer, I just learned the terminology for a lot of the different things. And that's maybe the only thing that really changed. Maybe I'm a little bit more critical, but I think overall, I don't think that I really read like super differently than I did before.
Well, you, Thomas, you think it's different for you now?
About the same. Like, every once in a while, I'll come across a line where I'm just like, that just sounds wrong. But I think that was before I wrote too, and I'm never going to claim to be a great writer. Like, I write, I enjoy it, but yeah, I think it's the same extent of, like, anyone that reads it might be like, oh, that line just doesn't sound right there. Like, I don't really think it made a difference when I started writing. Like, and still, like, try to just enjoy a book.
What about you, NC? Do you find yourself looking deeper into things you read now that you're an author?
Yeah. I think I'm the complete opposite to John. Like, I notice things way more now, and it's almost I had to really reassess like what I wanted to get out of reading, because it became like I couldn't enjoy something. I was constantly nitpicking. Oh, I would have done that differently. Or, there's a little this sounds wrong. I know why it's wrong. They should have done it this way. And I was just constantly picking, and then this was like, when I was just started writing, probably about 3 years ago, and then now I'm like, I'm just gonna read it and try and block off that part of my brain that just wants to critique the shit out of it. And I have to. I've actually gone through 2 phases. So I read for fun and I read for critiquing, and it wasn't enjoyable at all. And now I'm back to reading for fun mostly.
God.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, it stays that way.
I think that's interesting, because that's some of the thoughts that I have about when you're reading. That, again, you make a conscious choice to actually decide whether you're going to rip a thing apart and think about the things that you don't like at it, rather than just kind of appreciating the stuff that you do like. As you go through a book and go, actually, I really like this part, and just hold on to that, rather than kind of worry about, oh God, but paragraphs are too short, or there's too much dialogue, or whatever else the other things that could annoy you would be.
Don't want to interrupt, but I think I got to hit the road.
Cool, Thomas. Thanks for hanging out. Stay warm.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on 50 episodes. That's awesome. It was nice meeting you all, and hopefully we'll chat again sometime.
Cool, yeah. Take it easy, Thomas. Thank you.
Bye, Thomas.
Yeah.
Lots of comparisons to Lost with Heroes. Aaron says, yes, Heroes and Lost did have the same problem. Started epic, dwindled. Shows that benefit in recent years from being shorter seasons and overall runs. Dark comes to mind. It's 3 seasons.
That's the first thing came to my head as well, yeah. And their new series just released yesterday, 1899. So the writers of Dark's new series, 1899, just released yesterday on Netflix.
Yeah, I'll be watching that tonight. And so I was curious, is it common, because Katerina and Yolene both know several languages, so I wonder if that's common for those of you in those countries to know more than one language, because I'm always in awe of both of you, how many languages you can speak.
Well, I can speak two, which is not that much. I speak
It's more than I do. Yeah.
I speak Dutch and then, well, English passably, but we have three official languages in Belgium. So French and German besides Dutch, and I don't speak a word, which is a little bit humiliating because you are supposed to speak all three.
I think it kind of depends. So in the Czech Republic, we only have one official language, which is Czech, which is my native language. But I think everyone has to learn English at school. So in theory, everyone should be able to speak English. It's not always the case. You know, it depends on the teacher. It depends on like your social background. But I think nowadays, since like most kids, they have access to Netflix, they have access to YouTube, like all the songs, all the films like, are in English or like made in the US or in the UK. It's just a lot easier for young people to learn English these days. And then I think in most schools you also have to study a second language, which I did 8 years of German in high school and I'm still not fluent. And my school was supposedly very good at teaching languages. So I can't imagine how it is for other kids. I think generally people are they're able to converse in English, at least at the basic level. The second language, I would say it's less likely. But it depends on the school. Like it really varies.
I have a question then. When you're reading English books or books written in English, do you have that internal monologue translating, or do you read in English as well? Like if you have that internal monologue as you're reading the words on the page, is it English as well? Or?
I would say at this point, I'm just reading in English. Like there are even like a lot of words that I don't know the translation of, but like I can like deduce from context what they approximately mean, but I would not be able to translate them. I don't think it used to be that way. I do remember like the first book I read in English was, I think, like it was the fourth book in the Vampire Diaries, something like that. And I remember I read it and I had to translate like every third word because I didn't understand. Like I didn't have the vocabulary, but English has become so natural for me at this point that I'm just like, of course I'm not as fluent as a native speaker. There are a lot of words I don't know. There are some phrases I don't know. And like sometimes I do use a dictionary, but I would say I read in English. Like I don't need to translate first to be able to read a text in English.
Yeah, for me it's the same. I only read in English. I think that in my country, at the very least, our own language is not really popular in media. Like if you have songs and it's in Dutch, it's for old people, and it's really not cool. So everything media related, shows, everything is in English. So at this point, if I pick up a book in Dutch, it feels a little bit silly when I read it, which is not fair to the book, I suppose. But yeah.
But I think it is a very European thing to be multilingual, except if you're from UK like myself, who's done 6 years of French. I can barely speak anything. In regards to that, like I've a lot of friends and people like who are Romanian living in Belgium, but speak English better than I do. You know, that's definitely a quite common thing, I think.
Europe has so many smaller countries where you're constantly crossing borders, though, that like I can see why you'd want to be able to talk like other or speak other languages. Like in the US, it's so huge and we all speak English. there's no incentive for any of us to actually know another language, really, unless you live kind of on near where like Mexico is, and you have like a lot of immigrants. Maybe other than that, you don't really have the like populations of other languages to. I don't want to say care, but like there's no need. Even if I knew Spanish or French and I took both in high school and did miserable with both of them, it's not like there's anywhere I could actually employ those with any like regularity. I don't know anyone that speaks either of those languages fluently, and it could have come in handy when I worked at Burger King, because every once in a while we'd get like a bus of traveling Mexicans, and they didn't speak English at all, and that was a little hard. But otherwise, I mean, it's just never useful to know, I guess. If I was traveling to another country, then maybe I guess it's useful, but it's really hard to learn a language, maintain your knowledge on it, and then use it for like a visit to Spain. Like, if you're not using it more regularly, I feel like. But I'm also really simple when it comes to languages. I'm an idiot, so I can't learn. I tried. I failed French. I did awful with that. I did really well with Spanish early on, and then failed that when it got harder. So like, it's just learning languages is not my thing. Everyone conform to English, please.
But I think it's also much easier to learn English if it's not your native language than learn a different language if English is your native language, because everything in media and is so oriented towards English. I had 6 hours of French in high school and only 2 hours of English, but I can speak English much better because I learned it from TV. And now we're talking here, it's an international chat. Everybody is speaking English. So
Right.
it makes sense to learn that and to instead of learning a different language, I suppose.
I have a question for you and Katerina then. Do you think that my perception is that it's increasingly, I don't want to say important or necessary, but useful maybe for people to with the globalization of like technology and stuff, that English has becoming like more and more important maybe, or useful. I mean, I don't think it's necessary, but it just seems like it's kind of become almost the like kind of like the universal language when it comes to like bringing people together in a way that's maybe not harmonious, but kind of what's happening anyway. Do you guys think that knowing English is like super beneficial?
I think so. Yeah. I've always been a strong believer that it's better to just learn one language that everybody can understand. I know that in Belgium, I think that it's a couple of years ago, and I don't know how far that plan went, but they were trying to in kindergarten have a second language, and they were deciding between English or Chinese, because a lot of people on a global scale speak Chinese, but it's all centered in China. So it didn't really make sense to me, because I suppose that English is more scattered around the world. And I think that that would be easier. But I also think that, like for me, I learn it through media because we don't dub our TV shows. It's in English with then subtitles. While in other European countries where they do dub it, where somebody is speaking in French over the original actor, for example, they can speak English much less, or at least that's how I perceive it. So I would try to teach it that way instead of in schools. But that's maybe just because a school setting for me, it didn't work. They tried to make you write it perfectly, where I'm more like try to let people speak it at least at a passable level before you try to teach them to write essays in that language.
I think the example you used there, the French not speaking English very well is kind of a bad example, because every French person I've ever met is excessively proud of being French. Like they only want to speak French and they just refuse to learn English language.
That's also true, yeah. Half of my country speaks French, and it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that assessment. And I think you don't even have to travel to English-speaking countries. I think as Europeans, like if I were to travel anywhere in Europe, or if I were to like meet people at the same age as I am, we would most like 95% chance that we would end up speaking English, because that's the language that everyone's going to know. And I mean, it makes sense. Like there are not many people that speak Czech or Lithuanian or even like Polish, even though that's a big country, at least in European terms. But I mean, also like it comes in waves. Like my parents' generation, like for them, the most convenient language to learn was Russian, because they were part of the Soviet bloc, and the country they could travel to, everyone was taught Russian there. So I don't know. It's just a natural thing, and English just organically become this global language. And I mean, it's also like as you said, Yolene, like it's dominant in culture, in media. Like a lot of the internet is written in English. And when I search for news, when I search for, I don't know, work related stuff, I usually search it in English, because I know that's where I'm going to get most results.
Well, it helps that we are the ones that created that, right? So I think that it just had the base in English when we're talking about the internet, but also the boom of Hollywood. It's kind of like because the English versions of them were so prominent, I think maybe that's why it's just so like infused everywhere. I don't know.
What about UNC? Do people speak different languages there?
No.
No.
Like Australians only speak Australian. They won't speak anything else. Like I don't even have that strong of an accent compared to some people. If you go 50 k's outside of 25 miles, whatever you crazy imperial users use. Like, what is it? 3,000 and something yards to a mile? Some ridiculous.
Who knows?
Measurement,
I don't
or
use
5,000 feet to a mile. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm already
That's why it makes sense. We just use the mile part.
Yeah, if you go any distance outside of the city, you've got basically two accents. So like you've got a city accent and a country accent. And I've got a very city accent. But as I grew up in the city. But English, and then you've got little pockets like in sort of immigrant communities that do speak their own language. Like they're very insular. Like places in Western Sydney. So I don't know if you guys know Sydney as a sort of a cultural thing. It's like our unofficial capital city. But there's a place west of there. The name is blanking, like Blacktown or something. But it's full of Saudi immigrants, and they all speak Arabic. Just like you walk down the street and just Arabic everywhere, no English. And it's just really interesting to see those little pockets, like as you walk down the street. But yeah, pretty much one official language is the Queen's English, or the King's English now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to compare, because obviously, as Yolene said, the rise in the use of media, especially for using English, be different. Like I was trying to think, it's about 20 years ago I was in Prague, and a lot of people spoke English to an understandable level without it really conversing, even in a touristy part. And I imagine that has changed quite a lot since in the 20 years since I've been there. There'd be a bit better level of English even if I went across, because I remember just trying to get salt at McDonald's. It was a struggle.
I would imagine. I mean, I don't. I would imagine. I would imagine it has changed, and especially in Prague, which I think is also like becoming a lot more international. There, I don't. I mean, I do have expat friends who like they don't know any Czech and they get around very easily. Like I mean, sometimes of course, like when you're dealing with the authorities, they might require you to have some documents in Czech and things like that. But in general, I think when it comes to like staff in stores or wherever, they're usually like their English is at least good enough to provide the service that you would expect of them.
Yeah, I think Spectre has a good point. For Spanish, I picked up basic phrases you say to people every day. Hello, good morning, thank you, how are you, good, fine. That kind of, I think it's useful. Daniel, do you think it's useful to have, like, for Spanish, since we're kind of in the same area?
Yeah, but it's hard to learn for me unless it's like an immersion thing. If you dropped me off in Mexico and I had to talk to them that way, I would sit there till I learned, right? But here, since America like exports culture, that's like our only export, which along with that goes our language. I think that like English people don't have the need to learn a language like hardly at all. So we're much less likely to know a second language. And like I said, if you want to know what a meme means, like 99% of memes are in English and they like run the internet now. So I can imagine little 7-year-olds all around the world just trying to figure out what a meme means. And it's kind of changing. Like I think of Bollywood in India is getting big, and I think of music in South Korea, like it's really big. So culture is starting to become different. We're not the only exporters of culture like we kind of used to be. If you wanted to watch a movie, it was in English.
And Austin, a question for you, Daniel. What's your reading story? What's your favorite book?
My reading story. I'm just a very sporadic reader of books. I started reading at a real young age, and I've always kind of had a library. I read Lord of the Rings when I was real young. Some books called the Tripod Trilogy that really made me like sci-fi. I'm sure, I don't know how old they are, but they're really old. And sometimes I can go like 4 years without reading a book. Just get busy doing other things, other hobbies take precedence, and then something will come along to pique my interest. One time it was Mark Twain's autobiography, which might seem kind of weird, but it came out and I was like, I want to listen to him talk shit on the Rockefellers. And he did. And my favorite books are probably the art, anything by R. Scott Baker. And I also like dystopian sci-fi, where like the whole world didn't go to shit. The whole world like appears perfect, but is shit. That's what I like a lot. Where everything seems perfect because everyone's taken a soma, or everyone loves Big Brother, so everything like seems perfect, but it's really not. Instead of like the post-apocalyptic dystopian that it is usually in books. And sci-fi, anything good that like requires some imagination or inventiveness, where they could be terribly wrong and history could like mock them for their terrible guess. I just like the attempt.
Nice. So NC, what was your inspiration? Talking about reading stories, what was your inspiration to start writing?
I don't know. I just started writing one day. I was like, I'm going to write something and see if I can write a novel. And that turned into a very crap thing that I kind of put on the shelf for a while. But I was quite proud of myself. I did actually write a novel. It was 70,000 words. And yeah, like, I don't know. I didn't really read much as a teenager because I was more into like partying and drugs and all that sort of thing. But you know, because I grew up on the Gold Coast, which is a very party town. Yeah. Anyway, I probably won't go into that because it's
this is like the anti-bookworm origin story, and see, this is good.
pretty much. Actually, there was a funny thing that I remember a little while back. There was a list of things on Twitter. John might remember this. It was like you score points as you go along, or you lose points as you go along.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had like 2, and John had 15. And it was like things that you tried, and it was like, you know, held a gun or fired a gun or something, or like taken drugs.
Yeah, we were on like complete
Jumped
opposite
off
ends.
a bridge or something, and then there was like
Jumped off a bridge.
you got to pass out drunk, and I was like, okay, I've done all of those things. And everyone's like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? I was like, I don't know. That was my teenage years.
Just answered the questions, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't do like any of the list. It was kind of funny.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I don't know. Like, it was a culmination of things. I think at the time I was reading The Witcher, which definitely influenced, like The Last Wish. That definitely influenced what I sort of wanted to turn the series into and what I wanted to write. Yeah.
Yes. You gonna say something, Daniel?
I was going to say John turned out to be a grimdark author. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah, that's kind of strange.
And I would be a lot closer to NC, I'm sure. I had a wild childhood as well.
I had a very vanilla childhood. I didn't do anything bad, really. I have a very vanilla adulthood. I don't really do anything that's like crazy. I don't know why. So yeah, I guess it's really odd that I'm like really into grimdark stuff. You'd think I'd be like Robert Jordan's biggest fan.
I think it makes sense. I'm also very vanilla.
Oh, okay. Cool.
It's you trying to bring the excitement that you're missing from your real life.
I don't know what it
Exactly.
is. Must be.
What about you, Yulene? Crazy childhood?
Yeah, I think I peaked a little bit too early, and now I'm a grandma at 28. But my parents were pretty loose. Like as long as I did okay in school, I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And I think that was a mistake on their part. But I turned out okay. So
The grandma at 28. What about you, Chris? Crazy, you still recovering from that childhood?
No, like I was completely vanilla child, but I think most people have a period of their life where they go try other things. Say, let's put it that way. But I had this period where my mom and dad, in my mid to late 20s, I just think was just the greatest time to be alive. When you first were working and you had some expendable income in some way, shape, or form, and you were like, well, I'm not saving, I'm not moving into the house, I'm going out 4 nights a week, and I am doing that, and everybody around you is going, oh my God, he's obviously got issues, he's got trauma he's dealing with because he's never in the house and he's drunk 24/7 trying to go into work and do those things, and you're like, no, I'm just having lots and lots of fun. And then at a certain point you get up one morning and go, why have I never any money? And, I work so hard, I do overtime, and I get 3 days after being paid, and I am beyond broke. So yeah, it's time to settle down and do different things after that. But yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I wonder about grimdark authors, but it looks like they come from different ends of the spectrum. Sounds like.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think it's that, like, in media, I just prefer things to be realistic, and I think that grimdark has a lot of like realistic consequences, I guess. And I know a lot of people are like, I don't like to read for realism. I like to read to escape, and that's cool. But I have a hard time escaping if it doesn't feel like there are realistic consequences. But of course, everyone finds themselves escaping into different things.
So NC, you're I think it's the first time we've talked to you. So I have to ask you kind of the standard question I ask all the fantasy authors we talk to. Is the first question is would you consider your book grimdark? And the follow up would be, what is grimdark to you?
Yes, I do. I would like to anyway. Perhaps it's not as dark as some out there, but I think it's a matter of, as John was saying, like there's realistic and often violent consequences, and it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Like I write complicated characters. I write characters who will, condemn a bunch of people to die if it means that their plan will succeed, and that it's very, very grey and blurs the lines between heroes and villains. And I think, and like going back to your question, I think a lot of fantasy does that, saying that. Like a lot of books, just in general, they're like, read a thriller or a crime novel, that main character will do awful things, and no one blinks an eye. No one says that's a grimdark novel, that's whatever. And I think it's a very sort of reactionary stance, not reactionary in the whole like right-wing way, but sort of a reaction to the really high fantasy of Tolkien and stuff, where there wasn't really, I mean, there were some consequences, but in terms of realism, it's not really there. And that, I mean, that has its own appeal, of course. And I think it goes like Tolkien didn't write it going into it trying to write a story like, I'm going to show the brutality of humanity. Like he wanted to show a better world, and I get that, and that's cool. But it's a reaction to that development because he was so influential and going on. And grimdark now, I guess, would be, yeah, it's got the grittiness and the tone, for sure. Like it has a certain tone. If you read a lot of them, they're all like, the world is shit and life is kind of crap and bleak, and yeah. But and the darkness, of course, comes from the events and the characters. But I guess it's like most things. I was having this argument with some other people. I feel like I'm waffling here, but yeah, I was having this argument with some other people who were like, oh, it's this one thing. And I'm like, ooh, it's actually this other thing. And then I realized we were both right in a lot of ways. And it's just one of those things you can never nail down. Grimdark is just undefinable.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's really a wrong answer. It's just everyone has a different answer for it. Well, sometimes. But, yeah, interesting. Yelene made a video about that, about grimdark.
Yeah, and a lot of people have pointed out that I'm wrong in some aspects since that video. But I guess it's difficult because grimdark originally came from Warhammer 40k, if I'm not mistaken. So you have the people who say, well, if it's not like that, it's not grimdark. And then I think it has evolved since then, and it has like a wider definition than just that. But yeah, like you said, there is no right or wrong, I suppose. It's just it's also kind of a feeling, because like what NC was saying, a lot of books have the things that we connect to grimdark. But with grimdark, I feel like there's an emphasis on those aspects. And where is the line when you define that's grimdark and that's not it? I think it's very personal as well.
Or if we were to just use the Warhammer definition, it would only sci-fi could be grimdark. Because it's Warhammer 40k, it's set, 40,000 years in the future. So it's interesting that it's almost strictly become a fantasy subgenre. But it started as a sci-fi subgenre.
It's interesting that when you make a video like that, Yolene, like when you put that out, you make it because it's not definable in easy terms. Like you're not making it if you know everybody's going to agree with you. So it's to make a conversation point. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fun, but you really need to make sure that in the beginning you say, "This is what I think." It's not written in stone.
And of course, there's always a couple of people that's like, "No, you're totally wrong." It's like,
Yeah.
Spectre to comment, as much as I like being dark and realistic, I can't get into it when everyone is a dirtbag. I need at least one person who tries to do good and get into it.
Yeah, I think that my favorite, how I define grimdark is typically people, morally gray characters, but I think that doesn't mean what people often think it means. A lot of times people think that morally gray characters just mean like everyone's an asshole. But for me, it's like good people do bad things for good reasons, and bad people do they can do good things for bad reasons. It goes both ways, I think. And as long as their motivations make sense, I think that it works pretty well. I think my biggest problem with a lot of people's definition of grimdark is hopelessness. A lot of people cite that as like a necessary facet of grimdark, and I couldn't disagree more, because almost even the books that people cite as being hopeless, they aren't. The characters wouldn't be doing things if they didn't have hope.
Yeah.
So
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's a very common sort of smear. It's almost like, oh, your grimdark's hopeless. You can't root for anyone. Like, well, no, the characters think that they're going to succeed. They quite often don't. But why would they try if they didn't have some hope that they're going to succeed?
Yeah. I'm so happy that all of you are saying this, because I never understand what anybody means when they say no hope in a story. I mentioned in that video that First Law for me is like grimdark light, because it has some humor, and a lot of people said, well, no, because First Law is a story with absolutely no hope. And I just don't understand that.
I think that people are just wrong. Like, I'm sorry, but if you know that there's no hope and you know that something's not going to work, you're not going to do anything. It'd be hopeless to do anything. So, I mean, that kind of erases that argument right there, I feel like, because people are, even if it's just an inner monologue thing, like, I hope that I can succeed when I go and, I don't know, do the worst thing ever. Murder this child, maybe. Like, I hope that this works out. There's still hope that it's going, like, in a bad way, right? But it's still hope. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm a grimdark author. What did you want? But, well, at least I call my book grimdark. A lot of people fight back against that. But you know what? Grimdark Magazine said I was grimdark, so I'm sticking with it.
Oh, you crack me up. Chaudia says, I thought that too, Spectre, but I didn't like that any of the characters in the dark. I didn't like any of the characters in the darkness that comes before, but I still like the book. I think we can confirm that it doesn't get any better as you go in the series. So, what do you think, Daniel and Katerina?
Well, if you didn't like them in the first book, you're probably not. Well, actually, no. I would say in the second series, the Aspect Emperor, I think there are more characters that could be considered likable. But I don't think you're going to find any likable character. Like if you didn't like the characters in Darkness, it's not going to get better for you in the second and third book of the trilogy. I love the characters in Darkness. I think they're super relatable. So I don't see the problem with them, but I can understand that everyone has a different way of relating to characters.
What do you think, Daniel? Are there any likable characters in The Prince of Nothing?
I liked a character in The Prince of Nothing well enough to root for him, and definitely in the second series there are other characters filled with less hopeless hope, less we gotta murder this baby, and a little more like actual hope, maybe. And I kind of consider Grimdark when I stop reading it, if there's like no part of the world I would ever want to visit, then it's Grimdark.
So that comment about not liking characters, I often find that people mean two different things, because half the time people say, I didn't like the book because I don't like the characters. They mean they didn't like the characters, which is fine. But the other half of people that say that actually mean that they don't like what the characters maybe do or represent, but it's not necessarily that they don't like the characters. My favorite characters are characters I don't like. So
They made them feel uncomfortable. Right?
yeah, if they can ever make me feel,
uncomfortable.
if anything out there ever makes me like actively hate a character, that character immediately becomes one of my favorite characters of all time, because I don't typically like feel hatred. I think Joffrey in Game of Thrones, the show specifically, was like the highlight of my example right there. It's like, man, I really hate him, but I love that. And I think that's my favorite type of character, is the character to like that you hate, that you love to hate.
Hey, sorry, I hate to interrupt, but I have to head off.
Oh, thanks for coming by, NC.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks
it.
so much for having me, and congratulations on 50 episodes.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, nice to meet you all.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Take care. All the best, Nancy. Take care.
And see, we're making. Sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
Reminded me of a quote, like, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, like literally not caring. Hate and love are really close to each other, like in perspective. Indifference is the opposite of love, like not even caring enough to hate.
And
Yeah,
see,
I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Katerina.
I was just going to say, like, tying it back to the Darkness that comes before, my favorite characters in that book are not good people. I would never ever want to meet them in real life, but they're fascinating personalities with a lot of depth, and I love reading about them. I don't necessarily like them as people, but I think they're super interesting to read about.
Yeah,
I think
I agree. I think that that's fun with reading or fiction, is you don't really need to have morals, because these people don't exist, and it's a safe space to explore that. So I can root for the bad guy, because it doesn't really matter. It's not going to happen in real life, and that's the fun part of it for me.
Yeah. And see, we can all get along, John. See, that's the Chaudian man, so we're all good. Good evening, ladies, and good evening. Thanks for coming by. And Chaudi's favorite character is Xerius, but I hate him.
I think in general, unlikable characters are people that do bad things, create opportunities for conflict, and conflict in any story is interesting to read. You know, that's why soaps, etc., always be popular, because there's just nothing but conflict in those shows. Even though you can like characters, dislike characters otherwise, but everybody's capable of doing unlikable things.
Xerius is great.
Yeah. I won't bring up Saban. I won't say it. It's too easy.
Saban is not great. Quite the opposite.
Good old Saban. We mention Saban every week, even if he's not on the chapters we read. Just just because. But I'm gonna. I wonder if I kind of have a. I don't know if I'd consider First Law really strictly grimdark. I think it's grimdark. I think Yulene had. I think it's grimdark light. I think it's like a gateway to grimdark. I don't know if it's. I don't know. It's borderline.
Yeah, and
I-
I think it also depends on your definition of grimdark,
hmm
because it has all of those elements, and I think especially the Age of Madness trilogy is more grimdark for me at least. It feels bleaker than how it started off, but with the humor, it sort of makes a lot of situations easier to stomach. For me at least.
Yeah, I made the mistake of reading Baker before I read the First Law. So I read The Darkness that comes before, and then I read the whole Prince of Nothing trilogy, and then I was looking for like other books like that to read, and I went on Reddit and searched for grimdark recommendations, and everyone was recommending First Law, so I started reading First Law, and like after like 100 pages, I was, where is the dark stuff? It's just, it did not compare. But I mean, I still enjoyed it, but it was a different kind of grimdark, for sure.
I know John's a big fan of that series.
Yeah, Abercrombie's my favorite author, so, and a strong influence of my writing. But I would agree that his books aren't like ridiculously dark. I think I would categorize them as more grimdark than some of what you guys have said. But I think that just comes down to definition of grimdark in general. And for me, it's more of like a character thing for Abercrombie. And his characters are kind of all assholes in one way or the other, and morally gray, and I don't know. So I guess I would still say it's grimdark, but I also say that A Song of Ice and Fire is grimdark, and I get a lot of pushback on that. So what do I know?
Yulene?
I'm on the fence with that one because it's been so long since I've read it. I think I need to decide it when I do the reread, and it will also depend a little bit on how the series wraps up. Because for First Law, I said a lot of times that it feels like grimdark light, but now that I've read A Little Hatred, I feel like it's definitely more grimdark than what I thought at the beginning. So maybe by the end, when I read the third and final book of the last trilogy, I might say, well, this is darker than I thought at first glance. So with The Song of Ice and Fire, it will also depend on that, I think. But I also think that if you don't like grimdark at all, you will probably also not like A Song of Ice and Fire. So there's definitely a connection there.
That's pretty true.
Yeah. I think that season 8 of Game of Thrones and the way it ended had a lot of non-grimdark like things that happened, and it really tarnished a lot of the grim darkness of the series. I felt anyway, and I think if the books end that way, I will be sorely disappointed. But I think Martin has kind of come out a few times and said like a lot of what happened was not what I wanted to happen. So
yeah, I think he kind of came out. He just kind of said like they didn't consult him. Kind of like,
Yeah, I think he gave them like basic stuff, and I think they ignored a lot of it. Just kind of went their own route, which fair enough, I guess. The books aren't written, and what are you gonna do? I mean, I think a 5-year-old could have done better, but I digress. So they took their shot and they missed, and then they lost. The showrunners lost their Star Wars series because of it. So, actions have repercussions. Life is grimdark. I win.
hey John, thanks for coming by for the episode. Appreciate it. And Chadia says yes, but we don't count that season.
I mean, I wouldn't count season 7 either, but
The first half of season 7 is okay, and then once the dick jokes start, it's like okay, what's going on here? It's about halfway through season 7, it's like
yeah, there's a lot of things that happen in at the second half of season 7 that
Yeah.
really irked me.
I need to rewatch all
Really?
that.
Do you want to though?
Yeah,
Do you?
I do. Why would I not?
I think
Stop-
that you'll
stop at
say.
6.
I'm anticipating the Twitter feed. I can't wait for this. Season 1, amazing. I can't believe I remember it being so much worse. Season 2, wow, this is so fantastic. Season 3, oh my god, my mind is blown. I forgot how amazing. And then season 7, 8, why did I do this to myself?
See, I should actually post what my expectations are because I think season 1 I'm not going to like that much in general.
It's pretty slow.
I think 2, 3. I think by the time we get to the Ramsey boat and stuff, I feel looking back at it that I think it was just too sadistic. That whole thing, I think we've talked about this before. And then 7 and 8, I don't have high expectations so I expect a rewatch will only kind of elevate it slightly in my mind. I think that's the way I would look at it going in. But often rewatches just kind of flip that script completely on you, and you go, actually, everything I liked, I disliked, and everything I disliked, I liked. And
Earlier
it's
we
funny
were
because-
talking about
Go ahead, Daniel.
adaptations and how it's fun when they try to change the endings, but now we're talking about Game of Thrones, and you guys are all taking your words back. It was a swing and a miss, but if it was a swing and a hit, you would love it. You see,
That's true.
true.
it's a strange thing about adaptations.
It's true.
They didn't really have an ending that fit the world though.
Yeah.
It didn't seem thematically consistent, indeed. Yeah, I think it's the biggest problem. I also wonder what it's like rewatching something like that when you take out the narrative device of the surprise. So when you're watching something or reading something for the first time, how a big surprise can actually make you forget everything good or bad about it beforehand, and so you focus on that one thing. Whereas if I already know what the surprise is going to be, do I focus on other parts of the story and the lead up to it and how earned it is?
And Charlie had a comment, this isn't a change, which I guess the books aren't written yet, so we don't know for sure, but I'm sure it'll be changed in the books. I'm assuming so. What were we going to say, Yulene?
Oh, I am actually rewatching Game of Thrones.
Oh.
Yeah, we are 5 episodes in, I think, and at this point, I'm enjoying it more than I thought because a lot of people said when people were discussing season 7 and 8 and saying how bad it was, some people told me, well, rewatch the first season because it's extremely cheap and you're not going to love it as much. So I had low expectations, and I'm really liking it. Which
That's interesting.
is the other funny thing is that my husband also watched the series together with me for the first time, but he doesn't remember anything. So it's funny because I know what's going to happen and it seems like he has forgotten everything. But even though I know what's going to happen, I'm still really enjoying it. And it also reminded me how much I love that series because House of the Dragon, I really enjoyed it getting back into that world. But now seeing season 1 of Game of Thrones, it's better, in my opinion at least. And I think that big part of my love for House of the Dragon is just the nostalgia of Game of Thrones.
I think we talked about the difference between the two series is like Game of Thrones is a massive world. It's you're jumping all over the place, whereas House of Dragons is very self-contained within 2-3 locations, a smaller set of characters, a smaller overall narrative. So you kind of approach these things, but they definitely have a similar taste and feel and smell and perception of it.
Yeah, I wonder how much of House of the Dragon is because we missed it. We missed that world. Because I know, like, the first few minutes of House of the Dragon, episode 1, is like, oh, it feels like I'm back home again. It felt like
Exactly.
it felt good to be back.
It's like as soon as that theme song hit, I was like, "Oh, we're back, baby!"
When I finished the first episode, I was like 90% sure I was going to immediately reread the books. And I didn't because I have like other 10 series I need to finish first. But it did reawaken the enthusiasm I have for the show and for the books especially. Yeah. So it definitely works with the nostalgia strings.
Does that mean you're going to be rereading with us in January, Katerina?
Well, don't tempt me. I mean, I would love to, but I'm not able to do a Song of Ice and Fire read along and a Aspect Emperor read along at the same time. It's just it's too much.
Daniel, you're reading with us, right?
No, I'll be in the chat for the
He's-
comments.
He's
I
trying to
still
find a
can
nice way to say no.
Since I've watched the show and read the book, I know enough what happens.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I'll come confuse you in the chat though, if I can.
It doesn't take much. Yeah.
I heard one fan theory that was crazy enough to confuse me, so maybe it'll confuse other people too.
No, looking forward to it. Be good stuff. Well, we're coming up on 3 hours. Time just flies, but really appreciate all of you coming by. Katerina and Yolene especially, because I know it's late for you, and Chris, it's late for you too. So, thanks for
Katerina and
staying up.
Yulin beat me by an hour at very least.
But thanks for coming by, and I think we're gonna have something next week. I know it's the day after Thanksgiving. For I don't know, sometimes people are traveling, but I think we'll probably try and throw something together for next week. But
Cool.
Have that here coming up. Discuss that. And Chadi is going to be reading with us, and it is 3 a.m. for her. So,
Special
Same.
medals handed out.
yeah, have some medals for everybody. But Chris, if people want to get in touch with you, where's the best place to find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Chris Moen, or you can find me on Twitter at 7 o'clock shadow, as long as it's still up and running.
Yeah. The mice are still turning. Yeah, so I think it's okay. John, where can people find you and your work?
I'm on Twitter at @agrimbastard, and you can find me on Facebook, I guess. It's just also @agrimbastard. But I'm really most active on Twitter, honestly.
And Katerina, where can people find you?
The featuring forum, or I'm also on Instagram at The Errand.
Nice.
Oh, I'm also on page chewing. Forgot to.
As am I.
that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah. It's snowing. It's snowing.
It's got chat functions. It's got everything now. It's like
Yeah.
Okay, before we move on, real quick, let me just put in. I've only been on page chewing for a month, maybe 2 months. I don't remember how long I've been on there.
I have my hand on the ban button just in case, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say, wow, it's improved so much in that small time.
Oh, thank you. I think.
Well, it wasn't bad before. I just mean there's been a lot of changes and a lot of additions, and it's just kind of really cool.
No, I'm just joking. I appreciate it.
I
Yeah, I've been trying to add some little features in there. No, I appreciate it.
Crap, I was
Daniel,
bad.
yeah. Where can people find you, Daniel, or not find you?
The only place I'll respond is in the chat part of page chewing. I've never said a word in there yet, but I've seen it all, and it's there now.
It is, yeah. It's there now. And of course, also in the Prince of Nothing series YouTube videos, right? You stock that comment section too.
I guess there will be a comment section for this too. I'll hear things.
Yeah, we hear. We're grateful people listen, but we do get corrected on things that we get wrong. Like I think I've said a few things where we talked about a mule and it was really a horse, or nothing major, but so people are sure to correct us, but
How
we
dare
appreciate people listening. I know it's
I
crazy.
appreciate getting corrected correctly.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
So
probably
it's-
pretty
it's
rare. Huh?
fine.
yeah. And Yolene, where can people find you?
So I have a small YouTube channel, Yolene Reads, and there are a couple of links. Best chance is probably my Discord or on the page chewing forum. I check those two daily. Twitter, very sporadically.
Yeah. Cool. So you can find me on the page doing forum. We also have the blogs up now. I'm slow on that, but trying to keep up with it. So anyone who wants to blog there, let me know, because I can't keep up with all of it. I bit off a little bit more than I can chew. So, but thanks everyone for coming by. Yulene, I think you've had the most visits. I meant to count before, but I think you've been a guest the most, I think by far. Chris, I think you're pretty
counting.
close. I'll have to add it up, but I know like Taylor's been on a few times. But I think the two of you are probably the most. So I'll have to hand out some awards to both of you for putting up with me for so long.
Yeah, I think
Katerina.
the first time that I went live, it was still you and one other guest.
Yeah.
So then it was me, and then you changed the format, and now we have a bunch of people and a group chat. So it's nice to see how it evolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was kind of like
Katerina
see what
and
happens.
I have to be tied for the least, right? We're at 1 now.
You guys are the newbies, yeah,
it's,
but
it's
we'll
a
have to fix
debut,
that.
yeah.
I think I find there's lots of people on 0 though, Daniel. So you're markedly ahead of a lot of others.
Yeah,
That's
well, doors open anytime. Just let me know when you want to come by and stay up late. You'll just, Katerina, have your big mug of tea ready and be ready to go. Stay up late. But cool. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate all of you hanging out. And, of course, everyone in the chat hanging out with us. I was kind of surprised I made it to 50, but appreciate all of you coming to hang out and shoot the breeze with me. So we'll see everyone next week.
Congratulations and bye.
Yeah.